My fiancée left me for my brother on our wedding day, with my parents' full support. Now, she sought help against her husband's controlling behavior. I, 35 million, had the most terrible day of my life 2 years ago. An hour prior to our wedding, my fiancée, Alexandra, 32 degrees Fahrenheit, called to inform me that she was unable to proceed. The actual bombshell? Behind my back, she had been seeing my brother Nathan, 40 million, and our parents had even supported their relationship. Have you ever watched a movie where everything seems to be going well until it all goes wrong? My life was like that. I was making good money as a senior software developer at a rapidly expanding computer business, had recently purchased a home in a desirable Boston suburb, and was getting married to the woman I believed to be my true love. Over the course of 5 years, Alex and I had planned our future, built a life together, and I thought we were in agreement on everything. Alex was a marketing executive representing her company when I first met her at a tech convention. She was intelligent, driven, and had a knack of making every space she entered seem brighter. Our mutual passion for independent video games and esoteric science fiction films made us click right away. We conversed for 6 hours on our first date, until the restaurant staff essentially had to eject us. In retrospect, I can see all the red flags I ignored because I was so enamored with her. Her treatment of service staff ought to have been the first warning sign. On the surface, she was always courteous, but her tone was tinged with contempt. Then there were the smaller lies, which were initially little ones, such as claiming to be out with friends when she was actually working late. She had an amazing capacity to make everything about her needs, never apologized when she damaged my feelings, and persisted on getting what she wanted. However, I dismissed it all by reminding myself that relationships necessitate compromise and that no one is flawless. My family's dynamics ought to have been an additional red flag. I work as an IT professional and I'm doing okay, nothing great. In contrast, my brother Nathan is the perfect child who is incapable of doing anything wrong. He is a successful businessman who, after graduating from college, founded his own IT company, which by his early 30s had grown to be worth millions of dollars. Why can't you be more like Nathan? Or, Nathan would have done it this way, were common refrains when I was growing up. My parents, who are both in their 60s, never attempted to conceal their partiality. I recall a Christmas when I was 15 years old. My parents' old coffee machine was breaking, so I spent the entire year saving money to get them a really excellent one. After arriving late for Christmas dinner, Nathan gave them an envelope and declared that he had purchased a cruise for them. They spent the remainder of the evening savoring cruise brochures while my meticulously wrapped coffee machine sat forgotten beneath the tree. That was only one of many examples. Every move I made was questioned because it wasn't what Nathan would have done, and every accomplishment I made was evaluated against his success. I should have seen Alex's eyes light up when Nathan told her about his business endeavors when I first introduced her to my family. I should have seen how she progressively began to get closer to him during family get-togethers and how their discussions seemed to become more in-depth and personal. However, I was too preoccupied with organizing the wedding and envisioning our future together to notice it. Like all previous important days, the wedding day began as usual. I felt both anxious and eager. Alex had fallen in love with the gorgeous vineyard location we had selected, which was outside the city and offered a breathtaking view of the mountains. The flowers, the music, and the meticulously prepared meal that had taken months to perfect were all ready. My phone rang that morning while I was standing in my hotel room, fiddling with my tie for the 100th time. Alex informed me she couldn't marry me in a chilly, almost clinical voice. Then the actual bombshell arrived. Nathan was her genuine love. She sounded no apologies. She merely stated that she needed to follow her intuition. As she described how she and Nathan had been dating for months, I stood there with my hands shaking so much that I could not hold the phone. She hoped that one day I would comprehend that they had attempted, but were unable, to fight their emotions. The worst part is that I found out my folks already knew when I arrived at the location to handle the repercussions. That morning, Nathan had informed them. They were too busy attempting to manage the situation, to spare me disgrace to warn me. With the bold suggestion that perhaps it was best, my mother Catherine, 62 degrees Fahrenheit, said, "You wouldn't want to marry someone who doesn't love you." My father simply nodded, more concerned with the opinions of their golf club acquaintances than with his son's struggles. The hours that followed were a haze of cancelled merchants, perplexed patrons, and pitying glances. While I sat in a back room, still wearing my wedding suit, trying to comprehend how my entire life had fallen apart in one morning, my best man attempted to take care of the practical details. My parents informed me that there had been an unfortunate situation, and the wedding had been cancelled after some guests had already come, all dressed to the nines. I didn't realize the full scope of their betrayal until months later. I learned that my parents had actively pushed Alex to leave me for Nathan through a mutual acquaintance. They had assured her that she would have a better life with Nathan and that she was too good for me, promising to provide for her financially if she decided to choose him over me. For months, they had been planning this behind my back while grinning at me and assisting with the wedding preparations. The buddy shared with me text conversations in which my mother set up accidental meetings between Nathan and Alex, giving them chances to hang out. Alex had been informed by my mother that Nathan had always harbored feelings for her and that they would be a better fit. Knowing how significant Alex's career goals were, my parents even offered to help her launch her own marketing consultancy if she decided to go with Nathan. I walked away from everything that day. I moved to a distant state, quit my job, and stopped communicating with my family. I updated my email, my phone number, everything. I couldn't bear to live in the house I had purchased with all the memories, so I let the bank foreclose on it. The awkward interactions with mutual acquaintances who were at a loss for words and the pitying glances from coworkers who had been invited to the wedding were too much for me to bear. My therapist, whom I began seeing to cope with the trauma of it all, was the only one I continued to communicate with. She assisted me in realizing that what I had gone through was a significant betrayal by everyone who was meant to love and care for me, not just a failed relationship. We unraveled how my parents' partiality had influenced my relationships and sense of self as we worked through the years of family dynamics that had brought us to this place. Although they haven't been easy, the last 2 years have been essential. I rented a modest apartment in a peaceful area, got a new job at another computer business in Denver, and began gradually re-establishing my life. Through a local hiking group, I gained new friends who welcomed me for who I am now and didn't know anything about my background. I began meditation, worked on my mental health, and discovered how to be content on my own. I even hesitantly resumed dating. Just casual dinners and coffee meetings, nothing serious. Every date made it clearer to me that Alex's behavior and the toxic relationships in my family were more important than my personal value. I discovered how to follow my gut and recognize warning signs in others rather than justifying them. I poured myself into new tasks at work, which led to a promotion and the appreciation of my coworkers. For the first time in my life, Nathan's accomplishments were not being used to gauge my own. I could just produce my best job and be myself, and that would be plenty. My newfound acquaintances appreciated me for who I am, not for what they believed I ought to be. I believed that chapter of my life was finally over. I had a good group of friends, was doing well at work, and was even considering purchasing a home once more. Without the looming specter of my family's expectations, I had established a new life for myself, one that was based on my own terms. Then Alex arrived at my door last week. First update. Last week, I nearly didn't recognize Alex when I opened my door and saw her standing there. I had lost the slick, self-assured marketing executive I had known. Someone who appeared to have not slept well in weeks took her place. Her once flawless makeup was unable to cover up the heavy circles under her eyes, and her fancy attire had been swapped out for a simple sweater and trousers. When I allowed her in, she was trembling, not from the chilly Denver night, but from what I soon discovered to be ongoing anxiety. She told me everything while we sat in my living room, which is where I've been reconstructing my life for the past 2 years. As my parents had predicted, her marriage to Nathan had begun happily ever after. He lavished her with costly presents, helped her launch her own marketing firm, and purchased her a home in Boston's most affluent neighborhood. However, the dream soon became a nightmare. It turns out that underneath his endearing facade, Nathan is precisely who I always believed him to be. Everyone's favorite wealthy, charismatic businessman is a skilled manipulator. Alex talked about how he gradually took over every part of her life behind closed doors. It started out with suggestions on her business choices. Demands concerning who she could collaborate with followed. He eventually took a seat on the board of her business and was given the last word on all contracts. She described the gaslighting to me, including how he would move items around their home and claim she was responsible, how he would contradict their conversations from a few hours prior, and how he would tell their acquaintances she was losing her mind anytime she attempted to confront him. The worst thing? Everything was made possible by our parents, particularly our mother Catherine. Alex wiped away her tears and remarked, "Your mom tells me I'm lucky to have Nathan and that I need to try harder to make him happy." "That's just how successful men protect their interests," she responded when I informed her about his threat to steal everything if I left. Hearing about their son, my nephew, who is now entangled in all of this, was more heartbreaking than Alex's tragedy. Alex claims that even though he is only 18 months old, Nathan is already acting in a domineering manner toward him. Nathan has very stringent restrictions regarding everything, including the baby's playthings, colors, and when he can sleep. If the infant cries during his crucial calls, he becomes irate and accuses Alex of not managing him properly. She started crying when I brought up the subject of a potential divorce. Nathan has stated unequivocally that he will ruin her if she leaves. He has the resources, the contacts, and, above all, the backing of our parents. He has vowed to deny her custody of their son, force her to pay for her legal bills, and make sure she never again works in marketing. She came to me for that reason. To testify in court, she needs someone who is aware of the reality about our family, someone who can discuss Nathan's actual character, the pattern of deception, and the enabling actions of our parents. She believes that my evidence could support her cause, particularly with relation to custody. No, I replied. I didn't argue or yell. I simply informed her that I couldn't assist. I'll probably never forget the expression on her face. The difficulty is that I've learned in therapy for the past 2 years that I'm not in charge of solving other people's problems. I put a lot of effort into setting limits and removing my family's poisonous influence from my life. My phone was overflowing with texts the following day. News of Alex's visit had somehow spread. Suddenly, I had a lot to say from people I had not spoken to since the wedding fiasco. They referred to me as cowardly, selfish, and uncaring. A particularly nasty note about how I was proving my family right, that I was too weak and self-centered to step up when it mattered, was emailed to me by Alex's former maid of honor. The level of hypocrisy is astounding. 2 years ago, none of these folks defended me. When I was the one in pain, none of them gave assistance or pointed out the manipulation by my family. They now ask me to put my painstakingly reconstructed life and mental health at danger in order to support the woman who deceived me. One message struck especially hard. Your nephew, an innocent child, is involved, a mutual friend wrote. Alex doesn't deserve to suffer for everything he did to you. And that's the reason I can't sleep at night. That young guy is on my mind all the time. Being born into this chaos was not anything he requested. None of this was his choice. Alex is growing up in a home that might leave him permanently scarred if what he says is accurate, which I think is based on my experience with Nathan. I understand what it's like to be raised in Nathan's shadow. Will things go worse for his son? However, becoming involved would require me to reintegrate with my family. It would entail dealing with Nathan once more, enduring the manipulation of our parents, and possibly being the object of my brother's retaliation. I might lose everything I've worked so hard to build over the last 2 years. I am therefore at a crossroads. Do I uphold the limits I've worked so hard to create, putting my stability and mental health first? Or should I put everything on the line to save a defenseless child from the same toxic family dynamics that harmed me? To be honest, I have no idea what to do. My therapist advises me to carefully consider what I can contribute in a practical way without endangering my own health. However, every time I attempt to reason with it, I see the image of that young boy. I need your opinion, Reddit. Am I being self-centered by not offering assistance? Or should I defend the tranquility I've at last discovered? What exactly would it look like to assist my nephew without getting sucked into the family conflict again? Second update. A week has passed since my last report, and things have become worse in unexpected ways. My family seems desperate to pull me back into their insanity, even though I hoped that ignoring everything would make it go away. Nathan sent me an email yesterday morning. My stomach dropped when I saw his name in my email. It was a brief but menacing message. I've heard that our ex-fiancé came to you in tears. If you know what's best for you, stay out of family affairs. It's been 2 years since you were involved, don't change anything. For a long time, I stared at those words, feeling a mixture of sorrow and, shockingly, fury. The ostensibly wealthy and successful brother is threatening his own sibling because he fears losing power. If it weren't so depressing, the irony would be funny. However, Nathan wasn't the only one who chose to end the 2-year silence. I was at work when our mother, Catherine, called. Some part of me still freezes when I see Mom on my caller ID, even if I should have ignored it. The same tone Mother used to try to control me as a child, her voice sounded sickly sweet. Without even saying hello, she began. Sweetheart, I know Alex came to see you. You must realize that although she is going through a tough moment, it does not imply that she is thinking rationally. Nathan is making every effort to be a decent father and spouse. She changed her strategy when I didn't answer. Your brother's company is currently at a pivotal moment. Everything he's built might be destroyed by this divorce foolishness. He deserves better from his own brother, don't you think? I was able to find my voice at last. As if I were entitled to better treatment from my own family. There was an overwhelming quiet on the other end. The guilt trip followed. What's best for both of our guys has always been our goal. Families must keep together even though parents make errors. At this moment, Nathan needs you to be the bigger person. I ended the call. My phone began to vibrate with texts from members of my extended family a few minutes later. Catherine had apparently rallied the whole family. After the wedding fiasco, my aunts, uncles and cousins, people who hadn't bothered to check on me, became quite worried about family unity. A cousin wrote, "Neither of your parents is growing any younger. Do you want them to worry about raising their grandchild in a dysfunctional household for the rest of their lives?" Another message was sent. "True men don't harbor resentment. Be the larger person." My father's sister sent me the most vexing message. "Although your brother erred, he granted Alex all of her wishes. You're supporting her conduct, and she's just being ungrateful." It's amazing how they've created this story in which I'm the bad guy for not supporting their idealized family image. They will disregard any proof of Nathan's abusive behavior because they are so committed to his image as the successful son. Then, something that truly shocked me occurred tonight. Nathan was contacted by a former coworker who still works with him. He claimed to have seen several unsettling things happen at work, including Nathan hurling explosive outbursts at staff members, threatening them covertly, and falsifying financial records. He claims that a number of workers have left because of the poisonous workplace, but Nathan's attorneys have them bound by non-disclosure agreements. According to this coworker, if I assisted Alex, perhaps others might be more inclined to speak up about Nathan's actions. He did, however, caution me that Nathan had been asking me questions about my new life in Denver, such as my address and place of employment. The danger is obvious. Nathan will target my new life if I assist Alex. He has the means to seriously challenge me on a personal and professional level. And, as always, our parents would be there for him. I've put forth too much effort to create this tranquil life. My therapist says I've made amazing strides in establishing healthy boundaries, I have true friends who embrace me for who I am, and my career is going great. It scares me to think of losing all that. However, my colleagues' remarks, about further possible witnesses, continue to cross my mind. This is about more than just Alex and my nephew, if what he says is accurate. Dozens of people might be harmed by Nathan's misuse of authority. I've been recording everything, even the intimidating email, the deceptive phone call, and the flying monkey attacks from family members. Although she tells me that I'm not required to burn myself alive to keep others warm, my therapist says this might be significant. Not only should I assist Alex, but I also have a moral duty to call out Nathan's actions before he causes more harm. But am I prepared for the impending storm? I need your advice, Reddit. How can you oppose someone who has all the resources, family support, and power on their side? And is it worth putting everything I've rebuilt at risk in order to act morally? Third update. I struggled with what to do for several restless nights after my last update. Though not in the manner anyone had anticipated, the matter has settled itself. I want to tell you everything that transpired and the reasons behind my decisions. I must first clarify a crucial point. I had a breakthrough session with my therapist following Catherine's deceptive call and Nathan's threatening email. We talked about how my family has always followed the same pattern. Incite a problem, put pressure on me to resolve it, and then utilize my assistance to keep their poisonous system in place. She made it clear to me that getting directly involved would only make this cycle worse. But she also made a very important point. There are ways to help that don't involve me re-engaging with my family's manipulation or sacrificing my mental health. That's when I decided what to do. I sent Child Protective Services a thorough anonymous report. I didn't make this choice lightly. I spent 3 days compiling all of the information I had, including screenshots of the family's nasty texts, emails, text messages, and Nathan's threatening letter. I incorporated all of Alex's information regarding Nathan's domineering actions toward their son. I described how our family has a history of condoning abuse and hiding issues in order to keep up appearances. The report covered more ground than merely the current state of affairs. I gave background information on Nathan's manipulative tendencies and how our parents have traditionally condoned his actions. I gave specific examples, such as how they concealed his college drunk driving episode, how they settled a former employee's harassment lawsuit, and how they have continuously exploited their resources and connections to shield him from repercussions. Additionally, I sent proof of possible financial irregularities that my former coworker had brought up. I thought this gave a more complete picture of Nathan's personality and the depth of his manipulation, even though it might not have a direct bearing on the CPS investigation. Waiting was the most difficult part. Since I was reporting anonymously, I knew I wouldn't receive updates on the status of CPS investigations, which take time. However, I had at least taken a step that would benefit my nephew while still respecting my personal boundaries. Then things began to move more quickly than I had anticipated. Nathan sent me a flurry of angry messages 3 days after I submitted the report. His emails become more and more erratic. You think you can hide behind anonymity? I know it was you. You've just made the biggest mistake of your life. I'll make sure you never work in tech again. You think you're safe in Denver? Watch your back. You're dead to this family. Remember that. You chose this. Catherine had a different but no less informative reaction. I'm still troubled by the voicemail she left. How could you do this to your own family? We gave you everything, and this is how you repay us? Nathan is devastated. They're investigating him like a common criminal. His reputation could be ruined. I hope you're happy with yourself. What's interesting? None of the accusations were refuted by any of them. They were upset with me because I dared to reveal the truth, not because I made unfounded accusations. After mostly remaining mute during this ordeal, my father suddenly revealed his actual nature. In a letter, he threatened to remove me from his will if I didn't fix this situation immediately. His lawyer wrote the letter. I recognized the hypocrisy of threatening to disown someone who had already left the family. Then Alex sent a surprise message. Hers was shorter than the others and had a distinct tone. I know it was you. Thank you. I'm sorry for everything. I was more affected by those 9 words than by all of Nathan's threats put together. They were the first sincere admission of guilt I had ever gotten from anyone connected to this catastrophe. I learned through rumors that Alex had the leverage she required because of CPS's participation. Nathan's threats of assuming complete custody were less significant because an inquiry was still underway. While the inquiry is ongoing, she was able to obtain emergency temporary custody of their kid. The response from the family has been explosive. The complete force of flying monkeys has been unleashed. My inbox is overflowing with messages from distant cousins I haven't spoken to in years, accusing me of betraying my own blood and ruining the family. On social media, former family friends are expressing their sadness at the way jealousy splits families apart in ambiguous, passive-aggressive condolence posts. The problem is that I'm not as affected by their responses as I used to be. I've never had this level of clarity before, thanks to 2 years of treatment and self-work. Their manipulating techniques are evident to me. Every threat, guilt trip, and effort to get me to reconsider my choice only serves to prove that I chose the right one. My family is upset because I refuse to fulfill my designated part in their dysfunction, not because I have harmed them, my therapist pointed out. I violated the pattern they have been using for decades by opting to safeguard my nephew through legitimate procedures instead of taking part in their cover-up. The fallout has been dramatic but illuminating. I've had to react to the circumstance by taking a number of measures. To make sure they were aware of any threats, I first alerted the security people at my employer about the probable harassment. In order to safeguard myself against any possible reprisals, I also started working with a lawyer. I've had to keep my social media presence totally secret and bolster my personal security measures because of the situation. I didn't want to perform these actions, but they were essential for my security and comfort. But I've also received unanticipated help. A number of cousins who had previously remained silent have privately expressed their pride in me for confronting the family. I've received calls from 2 of Nathan's former workers who want to provide statements in favor of Alex. After hearing the whole story, even some old friends who had previously condemned my choice have changed their minds. Above all, I am comfortable with my choice. Yes, there may be repercussions. Nathan may attempt to undermine my career. The family may actually carry out their threats. However, I'm not basing my decisions on my fear of their reactions for the first time in my life. You're missing the point. Whoever messaged me and said that I'm taking the coward's way out by reporting anonymously rather than going up to Nathan personally. This has nothing to do with conflict or retaliation. It was about figuring out how to support them without putting my own mental health at risk or being entangled in their poisonous relationship again. I have no idea what will occur next. Custody disputes can last many months or even years, and CPS investigations can take many different paths. However, I am aware that I upheld my personal boundaries while doing everything I could to protect an innocent youngster. I discovered a technique to assist without having to burn myself alive to keep others warm. Thank you to everyone who has been reading this narrative and giving guidance. I learned from your encouragement that sometimes doing the right thing doesn't mean being the most dramatic or combative. Sometimes it comes down to figuring out how to protect yourself while yet bringing about change. Keep in mind that you don't have to choose between defending yourself and assisting others if you find yourself in a similar circumstance. Even if it isn't immediately apparent, there is frequently a middle ground. Furthermore, just because you were born into poisonous family systems doesn't mean you have to keep them up. Let me conclude by saying, I believe that the worst thing that could happen to me was losing my fiancé to my brother 2 years ago. I now see that it served as the wake-up call I needed to escape a dysfunctional family structure. Your lowest point can occasionally serve as the starting point for a better existence. My last update will be this one. I believe I made the proper decision for myself and my nephew, regardless of what occurs next. Caught my brother's fiancé cheating, got shunned. Years later, proven right, they only contacted me for divorce testimony. I, 30 million, attempted to persuade my brother, 35 million, to call off his wedding 3 years ago after learning that his fiancée, 33F, was unfaithful to him. Regretfully, none of the family members listened to my advice, and they nevertheless got married. Furthermore, by portraying me as a jealous person who couldn't bear to see my brother happy, they persuaded the family to cut me off. I haven't spoken to my family at all since, and they haven't made an effort to contact me either, until recently. They came a few days ago because they required me to testify in my brother's divorce proceedings. It seems that he had no intention of paying child support, but I have steadfastly refused to assist them. I'm now being accused of being selfish and callous. On the one hand, it feels like the necessary closure, and I'm rather happy that I can finally refuse them. However, some of my friends believe that I will later come to regret this choice. They think that this could be my one chance to make amends with my family, and if I turn them down now, I might not have another chance. What if I didn't testify in family court in support of my brother? I'm not sure what to do. Here is the whole tale for those of you who want to know more specifics. My brother, Mickey, and his fiancée, Na, who is now his wife, had been dating for 2 years when they were engaged. Mickey and I were not and had never been very close. Even as adults, our relationship as brothers was impacted by the fierce sibling rivalry we experienced as children. I was always, even unconsciously, in competition with him. The unfortunate thing is that my parents did little to deter this rivalry. They knew I disliked my brother and was angry that he was given preferential treatment over me simply because he was succeeding in life. To be fair, I was ignorant at the time and thought that families shouldn't evaluate you based on your performance. I believed that they ought to be somewhat neutral, particularly when it comes to siblings. Naturally, I now understand that's not how it operates. Everyone evaluates you according to your level of success, and family is no different. I had no idea how to approach things diplomatically at the time. Just whatever was on my mind, I would express it. Consequently, my parents discovered that I harbored animosity toward my brother since, despite my aversion to admitting it, he had consistently outperformed me in some areas. Unfortunately, for my parents, these certain things were all that counted. Mickey did exceptionally well in science, math, and related subjects. After graduating from college, he began working at a rapidly expanding computer business and earned a lot of money early on. He was intelligent, and his career graph kept getting better, so it wasn't shocking. However, I wasn't doing that well. I wanted to be a writer, so I went after a degree in literature. When I realized I was probably not as good a writer as I had been told throughout my youth, I became despondent and left school in my second year. I was just average in most things when I was younger, but I was incredibly good at writing. At least in that sense, I thought I was comparable to my brother because I would win various contests. I used my writing abilities as a means of competing with his academic and project accomplishments. But after leaving college, I worked as a freelance copywriter in an attempt to make a living on my own. My brother was doing really well and had even begun to repay our parents, while I was barely making enough to live on my own. Comparisons between us were inevitable, of course. My parents always made it a point to encourage me to get a more respectable career and to take my life more seriously whenever the family gathered together. At the conclusion of each lesson about my life, they would either compare me to my brother, advise me to learn from him, or say something equally irritating. These discussions frequently devolved into yelling contests. I would tell them that I was sick of being treated the same way since I was a child and that they were being bad parents by always comparing me to my brother. We would argue, cut off communication for a few weeks, and then they would try to make amends. It was the same ritual every time. Then, Mickey and his 2-year girlfriend became engaged. She had visited the family when they were dating, and I had met her a few times. Even while they were engaged, she seemed like a decent person and pleasant enough. However, my family threw a dinner party at our place approximately 2 weeks prior to the wedding. Despite our differences, Mickey and I always made an effort to maintain a friendly demeanor for appearances. Despite my lack of interest, I took part in every wedding-related activity. I still regret the decision I made to go out and smoke at some point during the dinner party. At that moment, I caught a glimpse of Mickey's fiancée Na making out with my younger cousin Jacob, 27 million. I had walked a short distance from the house back then because my parents were unaware that I smoked. I was perplexed when I saw Jacob's automobile because he had previously stated that he was going home. Curiosity compelled me to investigate further. I saw them together at that point. I'm not sure which of the three of us was more surprised, but I stubbed out my cigarette right once and began to head home without turning around. Na entered after a few minutes when I got back, but Jacob was not there. I suppose he went home at last. Fortunately, There were no queries about what had happened because everyone had been drinking and no one had realized that the three of us were missing. I didn't speak to my brother that evening. I left the party soon after because I hadn't had time to digest what I had witnessed. But Na persisted on messaging me all night long, pleading with me to keep what I had witnessed a secret from Mickey. She claimed that the only time she had made out with Jacob was when I saw them, and she felt a great deal of regret for it. She vowed that it would never occur again. Na begged me not to destroy her marriage, saying she was totally devoted to Mickey and would never do it again. She only asked that I keep her secret. After giving it some thought that evening, I made the decision to notify Mickey. I felt obligated to him as his brother, despite the fact that we were not particularly close. The least I could do was that. I told Mickey everything and asked if we might have lunch together the next day. He didn't answer right away, but he appeared astonished and upset. He simply thanked me for being honest with him before leaving for his house. I wasn't sure what to anticipate after that, so I was taken aback when, for a few days, no one in the family contacted me. About a week before the wedding, I discovered that everyone in the family had blocked me everywhere, which left me absolutely perplexed. I chose to go see my folks because I had no idea what was happening. I was shocked when they wouldn't even open the door. With nothing else to do, I went to see Mickey because I was sure he was involved. Mickey merely opened the door to make fun of me. He urged me to go as soon as he spotted me and began to make crude faces. His actions perplexed me much because the last time we spoke, he had expressed gratitude for my candor. But he was singing a new song now. Mickey claimed that because I was a terrible person, I was attempting to destroy his relationship with Na. I made up the narrative about her and Jacob, he said, simply to make things more dramatic. I knew Na had probably persuaded him that I was lying, even though his remarks were really hurting. I decided there was no use in debating, so I just went away without saying anything. My parents sent me a message later that day. After unblocking me, they informed me that they did not want me to get in touch with them ever again. Since I had nothing of my own, they accused me of being a jealous liar who was attempting to destroy Mickey's life and marriage. They accused me of fabricating terrible stories about my brother's fiancée in order to ruin their wedding, claiming they had always known I was bitter over his success. It was a horrible message. They declared that I was repulsive and that they no longer wished to interact with me. They were obviously duped by Na, and they trusted her more than their own son. Nothing I said would persuade them otherwise. I didn't communicate with my brother, parents, or the rest of the family for the following 5 years. They saw me as someone who, out of insecurity, had attempted to destroy Mickey's marriage. I was sick of trying, and there was nothing I could do to alter their perception of me. I decided to let it go. I was really distressed about what was occurring with my family, which made the first 5 years challenging. At first, I was depressed, but I eventually recovered. I'm doing fairly well for myself now. Since I've been in the business for years, my copywriting job pays higher, and my name is now more recognizable. I've realized how toxic my family was to me, therefore I'm happy with what I have and don't even miss them. They just came to my house and asked me to testify in family court on my brother's behalf, but I flatly refused. After everything they said to me and the way they have treated me for as long as I can remember, I don't believe I owe them anything. Nevertheless, my friends think I'll come to regret this choice. They believe that rather than excluding my family entirely, I should give them a chance, speak with them, and attempt to resolve the issue. Naturally, my family has done all in their power to make me regret my choice. They have been accusing me of being cold-hearted and self-centered in their emails and letters. They've even attempted to defend their behavior by claiming that they had good reason to ignore me and think Na was superior to me at the time. As much as I hate to say it, I can see their argument. As I previously stated, if my parents made a comparison between myself and my brother, I had a propensity to snap at them. This, of course, convinced my parents that I hated Mickey. They were so tempted to believe Na when she said that I was fabricating tales about her in order to destroy Mickey's life. Not that they were correct, but my remarks throughout those arguments weren't particularly polite either. In retrospect, I can see why they initially thought that the answer was no. Furthermore, I didn't really defend myself either. I didn't strive to support my version of events and instead let things go. Since they thought I had been lying, they naturally didn't get in touch with me for the following 5 years, until they learned about Na's extramarital escapades. This past contributes to my current sense of guilt. I really think that if we had all tried, we could have resolved the issue as a family, but none of us did. I'm included in it. This is the cause of my conflict. My friends' words that this might be my only opportunity to repair my ties with my family are still ringing in my ears. Particularly when the family is as toxic as mine, I am aware that people frequently claim they can live without them. However, I can't get rid of the notion that by declining to assist, I'm committing a grave error. I truly need to know whether I'm wrong for not testifying in court on my brother's behalf. Update. After careful consideration, I have chosen not to testify on Mickey's behalf. This is not something I must do. I've gotten by quite fine without my family for the past 5 years, so I don't even need to mend our relationship. I have no doubt that my family would not have contacted me if it weren't for the divorce and child support disagreements. For the past few months, Mickey and Na have been going through the divorce procedure. They were aware that I had been speaking the truth about Na's affair at the time, so it's not like they were unaware. Until they required my assistance, they simply didn't think it was essential enough to get in touch with me. Mickey learned about the affair a few months ago when he discovered Na messaging Jacob. Na maintains that the affair has barely lasted a year, saying it began when she felt ignored by Mickey, who had been preoccupied with his job. But a few weeks ago, their 1-year-old kid underwent a court-ordered paternity test, and the results showed that the youngster is not Mickey's. After the divorce, Mickey has understandably refused to pay child support. Na, however, maintains that since he has been the child's father for the past year and not Jacob, he should keep providing for the child monetarily. I can help with this. To demonstrate that Na's affair with Jacob has been going on for more than a year, since before they were married, Mickey and my parents want me to testify in court. They require my testimony to back their claim that Jacob, Mickey's biological father, should assume responsibility and avoid paying child support. It's all quite intricate. In the end, Mickey and my parents have been aware of Na's affair for some months. They never bothered to contact me until they required my assistance, even though they knew I was telling the truth. I've been struggling with this discovery for the past few days. I finally came to the conclusion that I owed them nothing. I've had enough of them and can carry on avoiding them, as I have for the last 5 years. None of their frantic emails or messages have received a response from me. I don't even think I should. I have, however, discussed this matter with my friends, who were the ones who urged me to try to make amends and get back in touch with my family. Naturally, they wanted me to have no regrets and had my best interest in mind. Nevertheless, I felt compelled to inform them of my choice. I could see my buddies weren't totally on board when I gave them my justification. I didn't owe them an explanation, but I went into detail nevertheless. I made this decision because, following my breakup with my family 5 years ago, these people have supported me. They have my sincere gratitude for their assistance. I told them what I knew about my family's poisonous behavior and how I had been handled by them in the past. This time, I went into detail, even though they had a rough notion of what transpired. Because it was so personal and I detested reliving those experiences, I had previously avoided talking about it. However, I thought they should know how deeply it all impacted me. I opened up about everything, including the taunts and charges I encountered after telling my family the truth about Na. I also clarified that my family has only contacted me at this time because they require my assistance. They never will, and they never did appreciate me as a person. They haven't bothered to apologize for their actions even though they have known for months that I was speaking the truth. They have been defensive, but they haven't really apologized as of yet. They even tricked me for a second since I was thinking about their perspective. Ultimately, though, they ought to have trusted their son over Na, but they didn't. So be it if it costs them now. I'm unable to stop it. Back then, Mickey and my parents didn't care that I was trying to warn them. Instead, they excluded me from their life and insulted me. Going back to these people would be wrong, and I will never longer injure myself in that way. That's the reason I'm staying away. My friends reassured me that they would back my decision after I told them how I felt. They concur that I've made the best choice for me now that they are aware of the full circumstances and my feelings. We are getting along well, and for that I am quite thankful. Second update. My family first arrived at my place 2 weeks ago, pleading with me to assist them. They chose to get in touch with me once more today because I didn't reply to their emails or messages. I was at home, and it was the weekend. In the afternoon, the doorbell began to ring constantly. When I looked out, my family was there. I made the decision to let the bell ring for a few minutes while I pretended to be away from home. However, rather than going, my father became irate, claiming to be aware that I was at home and insisting that I speak with them. I'm not sure how he deduced that, but I didn't respond. He insisted that I open the door and continued to shout outside for a few more minutes. He and Mickey eventually began pressing as hard as they could against the door, and I was worried that they may shatter it. All I could do was stand up and open the door. I was already somewhat irritated by that point. I didn't want to have to contact the police, and I had been quite clear that I wanted to be left alone. I didn't want to cope with the hassle that would come with living in a great neighborhood. I strongly informed them that I had already made up my decision and that I didn't want to talk to them when I opened the door. I refused to assist them. It wasn't even about personal grudges at this point. All I wanted was to avoid them, and they had to accept that. I wasn't going to change my opinion by coming to my house. On the contrary, it only made me feel worse. Mickey begged me, but my parents remained silent. He claimed that because he didn't think it was just for him to pay child support for a child that wasn't his, he truly needed my assistance. I should help him, he said, because we are relatives. That's when I started laughing. We had been anything but family for the past 5 years, but now they wanted to behave like we were family again just because they needed my assistance. I curtly informed Mickey that we couldn't merely act like family when it suited them. I told them to go since I no longer regarded them as family. My parents went crazy right away, so I suppose they didn't appreciate my tone. My mom informed me that I had no right to talk to them in that manner since, in spite of everything, they were still my parents and had reared me, therefore I owed them everything. My dad had began ranting at me. I retaliated, of course, and a few minutes later we were yelling at each other again. We might have continued much longer if it weren't for Mickey. Fortunately, he was able to stop them both. Then, unexpectedly, he turned to face me and started begging. He acknowledged that he wasn't always the best brother, but he stated that if I helped him now, he would owe me a huge debt. Mickey said that he didn't really want children and that it wasn't right for him to provide for an unfaithful wife and an unborn child. It all seemed dramatic, but I could tell he was desperate and really depended on me when he said that I was the only person who could stop this injustice. But after the argument I'd just had with my parents, I had no interest in assisting any of them at the moment. I threatened to call the police if they didn't leave. I closed the door after that. In the end, they did depart. After this, I really don't have anything more to say to them, so even though I'm not sure whether I did the right thing, I hope they leave me alone. I'm sorry for Mickey. Perhaps our relationship would have been completely different if our parents had been better parents. I'm not claiming Mickey was faultless or flawless, but I can't help but feel sad for him given his current predicament. He could have completely averted this situation if he had simply paid attention to my warnings. I still believe that our parents destroyed his life. Mickey might have been able to persuade me to assist if they hadn't treated me so terribly. However, the harm has already been done. Even though I genuinely hope Mickey is exempt from paying child support since, morally speaking, Na doesn't deserve it, I will not be assisting him. That's saying something because I hate Na even more than I hate my parents. I firmly believe that it is unethical for Mickey to be required to pay child support for a child that is not his. I'll stay out of it, but I hope things work out for him. Third update. Since my last update, which was 3 months ago, not much noteworthy has transpired. My parents have made multiple attempts to contact me, but they have yet to offer an apology. Rather, I've received emails informing me that my refusal to assist Mickey is a grave error. As if that would convince me otherwise, they even admitted that they are embarrassed to refer to me as their son. They were continuously disparaging me in their emails, and eventually it became tiresome, so I stopped reading them. They kept making new accounts solely to irritate me, not because I hadn't tried to block them, I very certainly had. In any case, I found it easy to overlook because I didn't give a damn. After a while, I became preoccupied with my job once more and stopped caring about it. I just learned about Mickey's custody battle and my parents via a cousin whose mother is close to my parents. This cousin and I have always gotten along, so she has been keeping me informed even though I haven't been in contact with most of my relatives. She informed me last week that Mickey would not be required to pay child support. Jacob has made the decision to become a father to his child after much deliberation. Jacob wasn't ready to commit at first, but Na made it plain that she would leave him if he didn't take the initiative and become a father. As my brother predicted, Jacob had, of course, been in contact with her all along and had met his biological kid multiple times. Although he didn't want to commit to anything, he did have a bond with his son. I suppose he finally consented to her requirements because he was afraid of losing Na. I've heard that Jacob and Na intend to tie the knot as soon as her divorce is finalized. They have begun to accept all of Mickey's demands in an effort to move things forward more quickly. But I already know that Na won't make it through this since no relationship ever survives an ultimatum. In any case, that will be her karma, and I don't give a damn. The fact that Mickey is leaving this mess makes me pleased. I hope that we can get back together someday, but I don't think my parents will allow it to happen as long as they are here. However, I don't really care about it. These things no longer have an impact on me, and I'm content with my life. My stepmother burned my late mom's belongings while I was in the hospital, claiming my dad would approve because she was taking care of us. I am a 23-year-old woman who has spent many years in and out of the hospital due to a chronic condition that I have had since I was a young child. My 48-year-old father has always been incredibly encouraging and makes an effort to be present for me for any operations or treatments I need. I recently underwent major surgery, and I had a really difficult recovery. I spent roughly 2 weeks in the hospital, and it was incredibly difficult. Dad spent the majority of that time with me, but he had to go on a work trip a few days prior to my release. He travels all over the country for his profession as a business consultant, and sometimes he just can't escape it. I really understood his sincere apologies for not being there to pick me up from the hospital. In addition, my 45-year-old stepmother was expected to take care of things while he was away. To give you some context, I have never really gotten along with my stepmother. We've had a strained relationship since she married my dad when I was 16. I know she doesn't truly like me, but I still try to be polite. She has always made me feel as though I was interfering with her relationship with my dad by saying and doing things. She also believes that I resemble my mother, who died when I was 10, too much. By the way, my stepmother detests the fact that I resemble my mother since she believes it serves as a reminder to my dad of his former partner. Yes, I am aware that she sounds crazy. But ultimately, I accepted my dad's love for her, which is why I put up with a lot of her actions. I eventually returned home after being released from the hospital. Although I was tired, I was glad to be out of the hospital. When I initially entered my room, everything appeared to be as usual. I ended myself napping after lying on my bed to unwind. I realized something was wrong when I decided to tidy up my room a little after waking up. I quickly discovered that a lot of things were missing, like, really, a lot of things, but I suppose I was too tired to notice how empty my room appeared. I began to panic. Perhaps there had been a break-in, I reasoned. I began scurrying about the room, looking for anything that might still be there. I mean, I was still so weak after my operation that I could hardly stand, but I was desperate. Almost immediately, it became evident that everything missing was my mother's property. Among other nostalgic items, I had a number of letters Mom had written to me as a child, some framed pictures, and this old jewelry box of hers. Normally, they would remain on my nightstand or dresser, but on that particular day, they were all gone. Everything was gone when I looked in the storage room where we kept some of my mom's old belongings, including her clothing and a few antiques from her family. It was unbelievable to me. I went straight to my stepmother. I tried my best to remain composed around her. I inquired as to whether she had taken anything out of my room. She gave me this self-satisfied smile. She then nonchalantly informed me that I no longer had to worry about any of those things since she had taken care of some of my things. I had a sick feeling in my stomach. Although I was aware that my stepmother had always harbored animosity toward my mother, I repeatedly prayed that the only thing she had done was to store my mother's belongings in a storage facility farther away from our home. My stepmother kept smiling smugly when I asked her what she had done with my belongings. I finally lost it and began yelling at her to tell me what she had done. She then chuckled and informed me that she had set fire to everything that belonged to my mother. I was so stunned by that I quickly stopped talking. I was unable to even comprehend it. She simply stated that this was the best way for her and my dad to go on with their lives when I eventually got around to asking her why she would do something like that. She apparently claimed that my dad didn't require reminders of his former existence. I attempted to fight with her, telling her that my dad would not approve of her actions and that she had made the worst mistake of her life. She merely laughed at me and claimed to know him better than I did, adding that he would be pleased that she had destroyed my mother's belongings in order to maintain their relationship. What I was hearing was unbelievable. I could hardly talk because I was so unhappy and furious. I tried not to cry while I was trembling, but the tears just poured. I felt as though I was experiencing my mother's loss once more. It was unbelievable to me that someone could be so vicious. I simply couldn't stop thinking about what I had lost. I lost everything I had of my mother. That's when I got too weak. I was overburdened. I walked to my room, leaving my stepmother standing there. After crying for a long time, I made the decision to call my father. He was in the middle of a meeting, which was unfortunate for me. He sounded quite busy and preoccupied when he eventually responded. I made an effort to explain the situation to him, but I could tell he wasn't really listening. He hung up quickly after saying something about handling it when he came home. I was so powerless. The days that followed were the longest of my entire existence. My stepmother, who pretended that she had done nothing wrong, left me feeling alone, furious, and devastated in that house. She was careful to emphasize that she had done my dad a great favor. She insisted that my attachment to my mother's possessions was immature and that it was time for me to mature. Every chance she got, she made fun of me. I'm not sure how I survived those times, but I was able to wait for my dad to return. I was waiting for my dad when he returned from his trip. I repeated everything to him, and this time he paid attention. He didn't trust me at first. He believed that my stepmother was just playing a cruel practical joke or that there was some sort of miscommunication. However, when I showed him my room and our storage area, he turned pale upon seeing that everything was empty. The love of his life was my mother. At the age of 10, they had first met. My mom and dad's childhood possessions were among the many items my stepmother set on fire. Those things played a significant role in my dad's recollections with my mom, even though he had moved on and married my stepmother. He valued them greatly, therefore it was devastating to see them all gone. My stepmother tried to act as like it wasn't a huge thing when he confronted her. She even claimed that I had brainwashed my dad into believing it was significant when she noticed how upset he was becoming, even though she was only assisting him in moving on. My father went crazy. He's never been so furious in my life. One thing about my dad that you should know is that he's a fairly laid-back guy. You have to do a lot to make him mad. My stepmother was obviously afraid and did not anticipate that her behavior would make him angry. My father immediately informed her that he desired a divorce. He instructed her to get her belongings and depart. My dad told my stepmother that the house was his long before he ever met her, despite her attempts to claim that it was also hers and that he couldn't evict her. He also threatened to call his lawyer to have her removed from the property if she didn't leave within the next 24 hours. My dad and I mourned the loss of my mom's possessions together, and my stepmother stormed out of the house. In a fit of rage, my father chose to ruin my stepmother's life. My dad sued her for emotional anguish and property destruction after speaking with his attorney. Her behavior upset him, and he wanted her to pay the price. Naturally, my stepmother lost her mind. She was shocked to learn that my father was supporting me. She persisted in pointing the finger at me, saying that I had influenced him and made him turn against her. My dad, though, wasn't having any of it. The fact that she had ruined the final mementos of his first marriage and the woman he really loved infuriated him. He was no longer even able to look at her. The litigation is currently underway, and the divorce is ongoing. Although my stepmother is battling it, she has little chance of success. She has been attempting to play the victim and has claimed that my attachment to the past destroyed everything. Some of my stepmother's family members have contacted me and accused me of being immature for meddling in their affairs. I am aware that I'd done nothing improper. My stepmother would have suffered the same repercussions if my dad had eventually learned about my mom's missing possessions. Even still, her family members blame me for her predicament and constantly texting me about how hard she's been going. My mind is messed up by the grief I'm experiencing, even though I know I'm not to blame. All I need is someone who is not involved in this mess to assure me that I've done nothing wrong. Is it rude of me to inform my father that my stepmother destroyed everything belonging to my deceased mother? First update. Hi everyone. Because of the tremendous escalation, I wanted to provide you with an update. I was still in disbelief over what my stepmother had done when I initially commented, but I can assure you that this case is turning into a nightmare for her, and I honestly don't feel sorry for her. It's getting worse for her than she could have ever imagined, and my dad isn't holding back. He's determined to make her pay. As it turns out, my stepmother had no idea what she was getting herself into, and the legal procedure has been proceeding swiftly. She burnt some quite precious items in addition to sentimental mementos. Antique keepsakes inherited from my mother's side of the family made up the majority of the objects she destroyed. They belonged to a collection that had been passed down through the years. A few items, such as a set of antique jewelry and an old watch, were valued at thousands of dollars. Even if that is bad for her, it gets worse because those antiques were covered by insurance. My mom's family had insurance policies linked to the heirloom's worth since they took such good care of them. My dad had even more clout in the litigation after he understood this. In addition to mental distress allegations, my stepmother is also dealing with a significant property destruction case that includes concrete proof of monetary loss. She must reimburse the full value of these products because they were destroyed, and let's just say she lacks the funds to do so. She is currently being pursued by the insurance company as well. They have begun their own investigation since my dad made a claim, and they are fully supporting him. My stepmother is unable to escape this one. She was completely mistaken if she believed she could simply destroy these items and leave. The lawyers for my dad have been keeping a close eye on everything and have ensured that she is in a tight spot. It's really cruel to see, but she deserves all of it for everything she's done. Thank God my dad was astute enough to have her sign a prenuptial agreement before they were married, and the divorce is proceeding swiftly as well. Since that means she won't be taking much with her, that has been a tremendous assistance. Initially, she attempted to challenge it, but her attorney just informed her that she had no case. Since the prenuptial agreement is unchangeable, my dad will keep all of his possessions from before and after they were married. That means my stepmother won't have access to any of my dad's money, a fancy house, or a fancy automobile. I am fully aware of her panic because she has been blowing up my phone every day. She manages to text me again after I block her. She screams about how I destroyed her life in these lengthy messages that she sends me. Her constant attempts to portray herself as the victim are almost comical. She says she's paying the price for something that wasn't her fault since I persuaded my dad into divorcing her. She keeps screaming that everything is breaking apart because I couldn't let it go and that she was only attempting to assist by burning my mom's belongings. She has also been telling me about how her life is falling apart, and to be honest, I don't even care or have any sympathy for her. People in her social circle are apparently beginning to turn away from her. It has been devastating to lose her reputation because she has always placed a great deal of importance on appearances. She used to have elegant brunches and dinner parties, but now her so-called friends have entirely abandoned her. I've heard that many people are supporting my dad because they understand how much my mom's possessions matter to him. Her sob story about doing it for the family isn't convincing. She is already feeling the effects of the financial impact. She is losing control of the lifestyle she was so proud of as the lawsuit continues and the prenup prevents her from receiving any of my dad's assets. My dad's business even rented her a beautiful car, which he canceled as soon as the divorce papers were filed. She has been complaining to me that she looks like a pathetic loser, because she must utilize public transportation everywhere, and that I am solely to blame for her predicament. She's desperate, based on what she's been telling me, since she can't stop messaging. She is looking for a new location to live, but she lacks the funds for a lifestyle that is comparable to what she is accustomed to. She could certainly live with something less expensive, but she refuses to live, quote, below what she deserves. She even attempted to use guilt tripping to persuade my dad to let her stay in our home until she recovered, but he refused. She is upset about everything, including the house, the litigation, and the prenuptial agreement. I always get a text saying that I'm to blame whenever things goes wrong for her. She is truly going crazy. According to a mutual acquaintance, she has been pleading for favors and attempting to win people over to her cause, but nobody is retaliating. The majority of people don't want to interact with her since they are aware of what she did. To be honest, after everything she did to me, it's kind of satisfying to see her crumble. She believed that she could simply enter, set my mother's belongings on fire, and pretend that she had done us a favor. She is currently losing everything. My dad, however, is surviving all of this rather nicely. He may still be grieving over what transpired, in my opinion. He cherished the items my mother left behind because he loved her so much. In addition, he abruptly lost my stepmother, who had become his new love interest. Even though my stepmother is still alive, he is quite angry and hurt by how things have ended out. He is using all of his hurt and rage to make sure my stepmother is held accountable for her actions. His attorneys are doing a fantastic job, and it seems like we're getting closer to finding some sort of resolution every day. It's clearly obvious that the case will destroy her finances, but I'm not sure how long it will last. She will be left with nothing as a result of the property destruction claims, the insurance company pursuing her, and the ongoing divorce. For the time being, things are unquestionably going in the correct direction, but I'll keep you all informed as more develops. Knowing that justice is being done makes me happy. Second update. Hello everybody. It's time for another update, and the situation just becomes more bizarre. My stepmother dug herself a deeper hole than I thought she could, but here we are. With claims of emotional distress and property devastation, the lawsuit was already going quite badly for her, but it has now gotten even worse. My dad's attorneys discovered something significant during the lawsuit's discovery period, which is essentially when all the material is gathered. It turns out that for years, my stepmother has been gradually siphoning off funds from my dad's company. She apparently had access to several of the company accounts, and when she took money out of them, she said it was for costs or domestic necessities. When the lawyers began reviewing the divorce's finances, they discovered all these strange transfers, but my dad trusted her enough to not question it. She was stealthily extracting hundreds here and there, so we're not talking about little sums either. She funded her lavish lifestyle with this money. Since he had no idea how much luxury goods cost, my dad was never informed about how much she had been spending on them. He assumed my stepmother would be reasonable about her expenditures, but he was completely mistaken. My dad was incensed when he learned. The last straw for him was learning that she had been stealing from him, even though he already felt deceived by her burning my mom's possessions. Her actions were not merely cunning, they were outright dishonesty. She had been taking money out of his accounts for her own use in order to maintain her extravagant lifestyle, and she had no claim to that money. She is currently dealing with a serious fraud charge in addition to the property destruction case. Things are becoming really serious as my dad faces charges of embezzlement. My dad isn't having any of it with her lawyer frantically attempting to work out a settlement. Instead of settling, he wants her to take full responsibility for her actions. To be honest, I don't hold it against him and, in fact, I'm somewhat proud of him. She has gotten away with a lot for a long time, but now everything is finally coming back to haunt her. At this stage, the case covers all of the money she stole in addition to the psychological harm and property damage. The case against her only gets stronger, and my dad's attorneys are doing a fantastic job. I'm shocked every time I learn something new about this situation. Even though I always knew she was cunning and self-centered, I didn't realize how shady she was. She was quite skilled at maintaining appearances and behaving like the ideal wife while surreptitiously stealing money from my dad. It's repulsive to consider. She now faces the prospect of going to jail. Money embezzlement is a serious offense, and if my dad's case continues as it is, she may be imprisoned. It's absurd to consider that she was acting untouchably only a few months ago, and that she is now embroiled in a major legal crisis. She cannot argue her way out of this because the money she stole is well documented, and my dad's legal team is working to have the fraud charges upheld. Her situation just gets worse with each piece of evidence they uncover. No one is providing her an easy way out, despite her constant attempts to strike agreements. She continues to blow up my phone and blame me for everything, of course. She insists that none of this would have occurred if I hadn't betrayed my father. Now, it's really quite pitiful. While she is the one who stole from him and destroyed the things that were important to him, she is denying any responsibility and pretending to be the victim. She goes on a tirade about how I destroyed her life every day. To be honest, I no longer even glance at her texts. However, I must admit that I am relieved that justice is at last being done. Seeing her face the repercussions after everything she did to my mom, my dad, and myself feels like the closure I didn't realize I needed. I feel both content and as though I'm in a different reality as I watch her fall apart and realize that she's losing everything. At this stage, the divorce is essentially finalized and is still proceeding. My dad will keep all of his assets, and the prenuptial agreement has made things much easier. Even though my stepmother is still fighting for whatever she can, she has little power because of the fraud charges that are looming over her. I don't know how long the fraud case will take to go to court, but based on what the attorneys are saying, she doesn't have a good chance. This new fraud case has completely changed the subject, yet the property destruction lawsuit is still pending. This time, she can lose her freedom rather than just money. I've been making an effort to keep my attention on my own recovery in the meanwhile. It's difficult to avoid getting sucked into everything that's going on, even while I'm still recovering from surgery. Seeing her finally receive what she deserves is helping me get through this very taxing circumstance. In any case, that's where we are at the moment. In summary, my stepmother is facing serious legal issues, the divorce is nearly complete, and my father is making sure she doesn't receive any more money than she is due. For the time being, it seems like we're finally getting near to some true justice, but I'll keep you all informed as things develop. Thank you very much for your support, it is really appreciated. Third update. Hello everybody. Almost 7 months have passed since my last post, but I'm here with the last part of this whole nightmare. Right off the start, I'll give you the spoiler. The legal proceedings are finally over. Let me now explain the specifics. Let me start with the positive. The court decided in my dad's and my favor on every point. The judge wasn't kidding around, and every single thing we said was true. My stepmother has been compelled to reimburse my dad's firm for every dime she embezzled. In addition, the court awarded her significant damages for damaging my mother's possessions. The entire cost of the damages was staggering. She will be totally broke for a very long time as a result of it. Her opulent lifestyle is over. She no longer owns pricey cars, beautiful purses, or lavish holidays. Officially, she has reached her lowest point. The divorce was equally brutal and ended at the same time as the lawsuit. My stepmother attempted one more dirty trick during the divorce proceedings. She claimed that my dad had emotionally abused her during their marriage, which is why she was forced to steal from him. She portrayed herself as a neglected, impoverished woman who only took money to make ends meet. It was unbelievable. Fortunately, my father was ready. Her accusations were totally demolished by his attorneys. Throughout their marriage, they had a ton of evidence that my stepmother was enjoying the good life on his cash. She spent the majority of her money on pricey spa treatments, luxury clothing, and vacations, not exactly what you'd call survival essentials, according to numerous receipts. Her sob story didn't convince the judge at all. Actually, it backfired horribly. The court viewed it as merely another attempt to influence the system and failed to find any compassion. Her credibility plummeted, which only served to exacerbate the appearance of her fraud case. Regarding the deception, she will undoubtedly face severe repercussions. The prosecutors wouldn't budge when she attempted to negotiate a reduced sentence or any kind of compromise. She was accused of embezzlement, and although she was fortunate to avoid jail time by entering into a plea agreement, she must now pay restitution in addition to the damages from the civil lawsuit. She will also be subject to the court's supervision for some time because she is on probation for a few years. The nicest part was that our local news featured the fraud case, which was likely the last straw for her. Everyone was able to view all of her unclean laundry. She was portrayed as a sophisticated, well-to-do socialite, but she has now been revealed to be a thief and a phony. I must admit that watching her be put down so openly was quite satisfying. Now that everyone is aware of her true identity, she no longer acts as though I am beneath her, as she did for years. She has been attempting to start again since the court decisions, but it doesn't seem like it's working well. When she first started looking for a job, nobody in our community would even consider hiring her. I believe she attempted to relocate to a different district in an attempt to start again, but she isn't doing well there either. She currently lives in a small apartment and works at a minimum wage job that she obviously despises, at least based on the messages she occasionally sends me. Yes, she continues to text me. Despite everything, she still blames me for wrecking her life and sends me sour notes every few weeks. By now it's almost comical. You took from my dad and destroyed my mom's belongings, and now you're the victim, lady? Yes, all right. I tend to ignore her, but occasionally I can't help but laugh at how naive she seems. I'm doing better myself. I'm recovering both psychologically and physically, albeit it's taken a while. My recuperation is about finished. I feel lighter mentally. I feel like I can finally breathe again now that this whole ordeal is finished, even if there were times when I felt completely overwhelmed. I still have bad days, especially when I consider that I will never see my mom again and that her possessions will never be replaced. However, it gives me some comfort to know that my stepmother actually suffered the repercussions of her behavior. I want to express my gratitude to everyone who has helped and encouraged me during this. During some of my lowest points, your encouraging words and guidance truly got me through. You have no idea how much it meant to me to know that I had support when it seemed like everything was crumbling. That's all for now. I'm hoping that this will be the last update I have to write on her. I'm permanently ending this phase of my life. Everyone, be careful. Am I the asshole for not helping my sister, who became homeless right after giving birth to her baby with my soon-to-be ex-husband? My sister, 24F, and I, 26F, were really close our whole lives, and we moved away from our parents together when she was 18 and I was 20. I met my soon-to-be ex-husband here and we got married, and my sister stayed close. We spent a lot of time together. Then a few months ago I learned my sister was pregnant and my husband was the father. I ended my marriage to him immediately, and I told my sister I wanted nothing more to do with her and she was on her own. I had some of her stuff at my place and left it at my ex's place for her. For the rest of the pregnancy they were living together, and then he wouldn't let her back in after the baby was born. She called our parents from the hospital and told them she had nowhere to go. That he was looking for custody and didn't want her back, and I wasn't answering her calls. So they called me, and after I heard them explain what was going on I told them it wasn't my problem. They tried to argue, but I wasn't having any of it. She got a place at a shelter for single parents and she's still there several weeks on. With the custody dispute she can't move back to our parents, and I am still refusing to help her out. My parents are angry because I won't even take her calls or reply to any messages she's sent. I actually blocked her because I knew she wouldn't stop. My parents don't know that part. But they're telling me I should be ashamed of myself for turning my back on her and the baby. I told my parents I owe her and the baby nothing. I told them it was just a shame she didn't choke on his dick when they were sleeping together behind my back. My parents called me disgusting for leaving them homeless. That I have room and could help. Am I the asshole? I was a shadow to my sister's piano career, exploited as my family's ATM. They even used my money for her secret engagement party. I, 35F, am a senior investment analyst for a major Manhattan firm, yet to my family, I am nothing more than a personal ATM. I've been hesitant to tell this tale, but recent developments have compelled me to seek outside viewpoints on a subject that has dominated my life for years. Growing up, our entire family revolved on my younger sister, 31F. She was a piano prodigy who began performing at the age of 4. My earliest memories are of helping Mom, 62 degrees Fahrenheit, and Dad, 65 degrees Fahrenheit, prepare for her recitals, ensuring that everything was just right for their little star. While other kids were learning to ride bikes or going on playdates, I was learning how to iron performance costumes and organize sheet music. Make sure your sister has everything she needs for practice, Mom would say, barely looking up from her phone as she recorded another video of my sister's performance. Don't forget to cook dinner. We'll be late tonight due to her master's class. By the age of 11, I was effectively controlling the home. Laundry, cooking, cleaning, it all fell on me. Because your sister needs to focus on her music, was the incessant refrain. I recall the day I won the state mathematics competition in 8th grade. I went home, clutching my award, only to find Mom furiously preparing for my sister's performance. "That's nice, honey," she commented distractedly. "But could you please assist your sister practice? She needs to perfect this piece for the Carnegie Hall Youth Showcase next month." The trophy wound up in a box in my closet, alongside other forgotten accomplishments. The tendency persisted throughout high school. While my sister traveled for competitions and master lessons, I stayed at home and maintained flawless marks. My parents paid thousands of dollars for my sister's private lessons, special music camps, and custom-made performance apparel. Meanwhile, I had to fight for essential school materials. "We need to be practical," Dad would say. "Your sister's career development requires all of our resources." I was not permitted to participate in any after-school events since someone needed to be present at home to prepare for my sister's nighttime practice sessions. When I indicated an interest in joining the debate team, Mom looked at me as if I had suggested we burn down the home. "How could you be so selfish?" she asked. "Your sister needs a peaceful, encouraging atmosphere to practice. You understand how crucial this is to her future." Every family gathering became a recital. Relatives would gather around the piano, gushing about my sister's skill as I served refreshments and cleaned up afterwards. "Such a helpful girl," they'd say patronizingly before turning back to compliment my sister. I learned to be invisible, moving softly through our house like a ghost, ensuring that everything ran properly while drawing no notice to myself. My parents only truly noticed me when anything went wrong with my sister's routine. Then I became visible, but just as a target for blame. If she had a poor performance, it was because I had not provided a calm setting for her practicing. If she felt fatigued during a competition, it was because I hadn't properly prepared her meals. During my senior year of high school, I was admitted into several top universities on partial scholarships. When I showed my parents the acceptance letters, their reaction was lukewarm, at best. "We can't help with any expenses," Dad stated firmly during supper. "Your sister's career development needs all our resources. Besides, you're good with household management, maybe you should look into becoming a housekeeper." That's when our neighbors, the Wilsons, intervened. They had seen me grow up and how I helped at their little accounting office after school while waiting for my sister's practices to finish. Mrs. Wilson, 55 degrees Fahrenheit at the time, had always regarded me as a second daughter, taking an interest in my accomplishments and promoting my academic endeavors. They promised to help with my education fees by establishing up a work-study program at their company. My parents didn't complain, they appeared happy to have me taken care of, so they could concentrate only on my sister. When I attempted to talk about my college plans, Mom cut me off. "We trust the Wilsons to handle it," she added, immediately returning to her phone and organizing my sister's next appearances. "Just make sure this doesn't interfere with your responsibilities at home." The Wilsons became my lifeline. Their encouragement extended beyond financial aid. They demonstrated what it meant to be respected for my own qualities and accomplishments. Mrs. Wilson attended my college orientation when my parents were unable to come due to my sister's summer music festival. Mr. Wilson, 57 million at the time, educated me on financial management and sparked my interest in investment research. Looking back, I understand the Wilsons saw something my parents didn't. A young woman with promise beyond being someone's support network. They supported my education not because they had to, but because they believed in me. Their advice helped me get internships, which led to my current career as a senior investment analyst. Throughout college, I had little touch with my family, only traveling home for important holidays. Each visit followed the same pattern. My sister conducting court in the living room while I assisted in the kitchen, listening to relatives praise her most recent accomplishments. My own accomplishments, Dean's List accolades, internships at famous firms, job offers, were largely overlooked. Everything changed 10 years ago, at what was supposed to be my sister's breakthrough moment. She was preparing for the prestigious Chicago International Piano Competition, which my parents were confident would propel her career to new heights. They'd spent months working out every element, from her performance pieces to her stage demeanor. Even her food was methodically planned to keep her in top-performing condition. The injury occurred during an especially intensive practice session. She was working on Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 3, a notoriously difficult piece that she persisted on performing despite her teacher's objections. I was at work when Mom called me, her voice quivering with hysteria. "Get to Northwestern Memorial ASAP. Your sister, her wrist, you must come right soon." I discovered them in the ER. Mom screaming violently, Dad pacing like a caged animal, and my sister pale and mute, cradling her right wrist. The diagnosis was devastating. Significant tendon injury with potential nerve involvement. The doctor's words sounded like hammers in the sterile hospital room. Significant rehabilitation is required. Prognosis is unknown. Professional performance might no longer be possible. The next few months were a blur of specialists, second opinions, and increasingly frantic attempts at treatment. My parents liquidated everything they could, including Dad's prized vintage Mustang collection, Mom's family antiques, and even their retirement savings. They flew in European specialists, attempted experimental treatments, and sought advice from alternative medicine practitioners, anything that gave them hope. I watched their finances vanish as they sought miraculous treatments. When their financial advisor suggested bankruptcy protection, they looked at him as if he had suggested abandoning their child. Money is just money, Dad said. Our daughter's talent is priceless. I saw he said daughter, as he normally does. Reality set in gradually, like a slow-moving storm. Despite multiple treatments, my sister's wrist never recovered the strength and flexibility required for professional performance. The physicians eventually verified our fears. Her career as a concert pianist was ended. It was more than simply the loss of a profession. It was the dissolution of our entire family mythos. My parents became older in just a few months. Mom stopped fixing her hair and cosmetics, and spent days in her bathrobe viewing footage of my sister's previous performances. Dad, who had always been the family's rock, began missing appointments, bills, and even food. Sometimes they appeared lost, as if their identities were inextricably linked to my sister's musical career. That's when their focus moved to me. But not in the way I had secretly wanted for all those years. They regarded me not as their daughter who could help them recover, but as a financial answer to their escalating issues. I had recently gotten a huge promotion at my firm, becoming a senior analyst before the age of 30, an accomplishment that would have gone unnoticed if it hadn't come with a substantial income rise. "You're doing so well," Mom said on one of her first calls to me in months. Her prideful tone was swiftly followed by, "Your sister needs help with her medical bills. Since you're in such a good position now?" The request was wrapped in layers of remorse and obligation, given with the skillful manipulation that only a mother can perform. At first, I agreed to make a modest monthly donation of $1,000 to help with my sister's therapy and living expenses. It appeared sensible, even necessary. They were family, after all, and I was finally able to give back. The thankfulness looked sincere at first. Mom phoned me on a regular basis to check on my sister's progress, while Dad wrote awkward but emotional thank you emails. But the requests kept coming, each one bigger than the last, with increasingly convoluted excuses. My sister wanted a new automobile because public transportation made her anxious following the incident. My sister's recuperation was hampered by negative energy in the house, which required repair. They required a family vacation because emotional healing is just as important as physical therapy. Then came the credit cards. Just for emergencies, they said, and I was added as an authorized user to their accounts. Their concept of an emergency was surprisingly fluid. Shopping became retail therapy, costly restaurants were necessary for maintaining family bonds during a crisis, and luxury spa retreats were considered essential for recovery. Monthly expenses rose like ivy on a wall, gradually at first, then abruptly overpowering. $1,000 became $2,000, and finally $3,000. Each increment was followed by detailed explanations and emotional manipulation. "After everything we've done for you," became their regular refrain, though I couldn't recall exactly what they'd done. When I hesitated over a particularly substantial request, Mom reminded me of all the sacrifices they'd made, conveniently forgetting that those sacrifices were solely for my sister. My buddy Rachel, 35F, whom I've known since college, was watching the situation with growing concern. "They're not treating you like family," she explained during our weekly dinner at her parents' restaurant. "They're treating you like an ATM with legs." I dismissed her concerns at first, making excuses about family commitments and filial duty. But her comments stayed with me like burrs. The Wilsons, my long-standing mentors, were also concerned. Mrs. Wilson took me aside after our monthly lunch meeting. "Honey," she began, her face wrinkled with concern. "This is not support, it is exploitation. We didn't help you advance your job so you could become your family's personal banker." The breaking point came last week, when I realized they had spent more than $122,000 on my sister's therapeutic shopping spree, without telling me. The expenses included designer clothes, spa treatments, and a weekend at a luxury resort, all explained as necessary for her emotional recovery. When I tried to talk about setting boundaries, Mom fell into tears and gave an Oscar-worthy act about how I was abandoning the family in our time of need. Later that night, Dad called. His voice was gruff and disapproving, using the same authoritarian tone that had kept me in line throughout my youth. "Your sister requires our assistance more than ever," he admonished. "How can you be so selfish when she's still trying to find her way? We've raised you better than this." The irony of his words, "we raised you," hit me like a physical blow. Did they raise me, or did I raise myself under the influence of their obsession with my sister? Yesterday, I received another credit card statement for $115,000 for a health retreat that I never approved. When I called to inquire, my sister answered the phone. "You make so much money," she added dismissively, with the same arrogant tone I remembered from childhood. "Stop being stingy. You know Mom and Dad need this to deal with everything they've been through because of me." I'm writing from my office on the 47th level of our Manhattan building, surrounded by the trappings of my success, despite, rather than because of, my family's support. The chart on my second monitor depicts my family's financial abuse in cold, hard statistics. Over the last year, they've spent more than $150,000 of my money, which is more than most families' annual income. My financial consultant is concerned about the implications for my long-term financial security. My therapist gently indicates that it is important to set hard boundaries. Rachel alternates between providing her guest room and volunteering to tell my family where they can go, in many languages, thanks to her worldwide business experience. But every time I consider cutting them off, I remember the little girl who simply wanted her parents to appreciate her accomplishments. The adolescent who believed that if she worked hard enough, someone would eventually recognize her as more than a support system. The young woman who still hopes that her family would see her as more than a resource. I'm currently at a crossroads, confronting decisions I never intended to make. The Wilsons, who have been more like parents to me than my own, advise I should protect myself. Rachel provides practical assistance and a secure place to ponder. My therapist discusses boundaries and self-respect, words that appear easy but bear the weight of decades of familial relationships. I'm having trouble with questions that don't seem to have any correct answers. Am I being ruthless by considering financial constraints? Is it immoral to want appreciation for my own achievements? Should I simply accept that this is my job in the family, the dependable one, the responsible one, the human ATM? I really don't know anymore. Update 1. My world imploded yesterday when I found on Instagram that my parents are presently in Hawaii, not for a vacation, but for my sister's secret engagement party, which they paid for with my credit card. During lunch, I was aimlessly scrolling through my feed when I came across a post from a mutual acquaintance that stopped me cold. Paradise with the future wife, what's Josh, engagement bliss to Hawaii. There she was, beaming on a beautiful beach, standing next to her boyfriend, now fiancé, with our parents and his family in the background. They had been there for 3 days. I went 3 days without hearing a word from you. Confused and hurt, I opened my banking app. The charges struck me like fists. First-class flights to Honolulu cost $24,800. Grand WEA Resort, 3 Ocean View suites for $21,600. Additional expenses include a welcome meal, spa treatments, a sailing excursion, and a private beachside dinner for $12,000. My hands shook as I dialed Mom's number. When she responded, I could hear Hawaiian music and laughter in the background. "Oh honey," she explained casually, "your father and I just decided to take a short break. You're aware of how tough things have been lately? A short break at the Grand WEA with my sister's fiancé's complete family. That kind of break cost more than $58,000, on my credit card." Silence. Muffled voices. Then my sister got on the phone, her remarks oozing with entitlement. "Listen, Miss Executive," she snarled. "You are not required here. You are no longer family, but rather a walking ATM. Nobody wants to hear about your valuable career as we celebrate my engagement." I urged myself to be calm. "That ATM just paid nearly $60,000 for your little party." She laughed coldly. "That's what you're good at, isn't it? Keep doing your fancy job, and we'll enjoy spending your money. It's the only thing you're helpful for." Always was. The call went dead. Within minutes, they had blocked me on all platforms. Mom sent a final message that read, "We're all tired of your negative attitude and jealousy. Please leave us alone. You've spoiled enough precious moments for your sister." Something cold and hard solidified in my chest. My hands remained steady when I accessed my banking app. Each click felt like it broke another link in the chain that had connected me to their torture. Click. Hotel reservations are canceled. Click. Spa packages and excursions are canceled. Click. Return flight tickets have been canceled. Click. Mom's card is permanently deactivated. The aftermath was immediate. My phone burst with calls and messages. Mom. It's an emergency. Call immediately. Dad says. Fix this quickly. You are embarrassing the family. Sister. You better get this right. Number. Hawaii. The future in-laws, without a doubt. As the hours passed, their tone changed. Mom said. Sweetie, please, we can talk. Father. We'll pay you back. Sister. Stop being so petty, it is my engagement. Then my sister sent out a social media blast. I can't believe my own sister would spoil the best time of my life. She has always been envious, but this is a new low. Toxic family. Heartbroken. I'd been quiet long enough. I shared everything, screenshots, credit card statements, and messages. The truth about their hidden celebration, unapproved charges, and nasty statements. The tide shifted immediately. People rallied in support as they realized the truth behind their carefully prepared narrative. Mutual friends informed me of the consequences of my acts. My parents needed to borrow money merely to purchase economy flights home. They had to check out of the Grand WEA in front of other visitors. My sister had a temper tantrum in the lobby, which ended up on TikTok. The actual explosion occurred when the fiancé's family discovered they had been caught up in my family's web of deception. They'd been promised a fully compensated luxury holiday, only to find out they were part of a plot to exploit the rich sister. The engagement itself is being called into question, with the fiancé's family questioning the entire arrangement. I am writing this update from my friend Rachel's guest room. The Wilsons have shown their support, reminding me that true family does not treat you like an ATM. I have locked all of my accounts, and my lawyer is drafting cease and desist letters. What is the most difficult part? I don't feel anything. There is no guilt. There's no sadness. Just relief. It's as if I finally laid down a burden I've been carrying my entire life. Perhaps that is what freedom feels like. Update 2. My Hawaii post has had an illuminating impact. What began as a family quarrel has revealed years of deception to a much larger audience than planned. 3 days after my previous post, I received an email from my sister's fiancé's mother. We met in a quiet cafe in Manhattan. We had no idea, she said, wrapping her hands around her coffee cup. Your parents informed us that they were wealthy financial managers, and that your sister was taking a sabbatical from her concert piano career. They stated that this luxury vacation was a gift to both families. She revealed specifics concerning my family's dishonesty. They portrayed themselves as wealthy sophisticates, telling anecdotes about their great occupations and my sister's temporary hiatus from performing. The realization struck their family hard. James is devastated, she continued, not for the money, but for the lies. He confronted my sister about using my credit cards without authorization. She chuckled and stated, she's my sister, her money is family money. That evening, James ended their engagement. I can't build a life with someone who thinks it's okay to steal from and exclude their own sister, he told her. He returned the ring and walked away, his family fully supporting his decision. My sister's reaction was explosive. She recorded a lengthy Instagram live tirade blaming me for losing her chance at happiness, and when that failed to get traction, she began contacting my colleagues, spreading stories about how I abandoned my family during their time of need. However, her efforts backfired. My documented post had already made the rounds. People had seen the credit card statements, read the texts, and recognized the pattern of exploitation. Each fresh attack from her simply strengthened my narrative. My parents' professional consequences has been devastating. Dad's consulting customers began to distance themselves, Mom's social position in her charity circles plummeted, and their carefully cultivated image was broken. They've been trying to reach me via every imaginable method, and the tone of their messages alternates between appealing and demanding. We are still your parents. You can't just cut us off after all we've done for you. Your sister is devastated. How can you be so cruel? We'll pay you back, just give us time. They showed up at my workplace yesterday. Security turned them away, but not before Mom made a fuss in the lobby, wailing about her ungrateful daughter. My colleagues have been quite sympathetic, with several sharing their own experiences with family financial abuse. The Wilsons have been my rock throughout this. Mrs. Wilson helped me update all of my banking information and set up additional security measures, and Mr. Wilson is aiding me in documenting every unlawful transaction for possible legal action. Rachel's parents offered me their guest house for as long as I needed it. Family doesn't steal from family, Rachel's mom told me. And they certainly don't exclude their own daughter from family celebrations while spending her money. My sister's ex-fiancé's family has been surprisingly supportive, openly defending my actions and sharing their own experiences with my family's dishonesty. Their narrative has helped others understand the full extent of the manipulation. My parents sent me a big envelope today containing a promissory note for the Hawaii expenses, as well as a letter about healing our family bonds and moving forward together. They advised family therapy and regular meals to help re-establish trust. However, there was no acknowledgement of their decades of emotional abuse, or of how they'd methodically abused me while removing me from the family. The letter spoke of misunderstandings, as if $58,000 in illegal charges and a secret family celebration were simple mistakes. I returned the letter unopened, accompanied with a formal cease and desist notification from my lawyer. Some extended family members have attempted to mediate. They're still your parents, they explain. Family is family. But here's the thing, they've never treated me like family. I was their housekeeper, their ATM, their backup plan, never their daughter, sister, or true part of the family. I'm tired of being the family bank, the unseen support system, and sacrificing my financial and emotional security for people who see me as nothing more than a resource to be used. For the first time in my life, I am putting myself first. My money is my money, my time is my time, and my life is my life, which is extremely freeing. Update 3. It's been a month since my previous update, and I finally accomplished something I never imagined possible. Full tranquility. 2 weeks ago, my family made their final attempt at reconciliation, arriving to my apartment with photo albums and recital programs. The doorman refused to let them in, but they waited in the lobby for hours. "We just want to remind her of the good times," Mom told the doorman, flipping through images of my sister's performances and pointing out shots where I might be seen in the background, usually hauling equipment or adjusting costumes. Dad attempted to contact my colleagues via LinkedIn. "We're worried about our daughter's mental health," he wrote. "She's cutting off her loving family over a simple misunderstanding about shared finances." My co-workers shared his mails to me, along with comments justifying my behavior. My sister's current social media technique has been to play the victim, creating videos about toxic individualism and how money destroys families, while carefully editing out the unauthorized charges and the secret engagement party. However, the comment sections are brimming with folks who have shared the entire narrative. The final straw came when they contacted the Wilsons to make me see reason. Mr. Wilson responded quickly and emphatically. "You've exploited her for years. Leave her alone. I've changed my phone number, shut down my accounts, and even pondered moving to another city. My therapist thinks I'm finally recovering my life, and for the first time in years, I feel liberated." They phoned the Wilsons to help me see reason. Mr. Wilson's response was perfect. "For 30 years, I've seen you treat her as nothing more than a convenience. She is finally appreciating herself as she should have been regarded all along. My lawyer has written formal letters requesting payback of all improper transactions, which totaled over $287,000 over 3 years. They claim everything was agreed upon and that I'm rewriting history. The bank's fraud department disagrees, and investigations are still ongoing. I've moved to a new apartment in a secure building, my mail has been routed through a screening agency, my phone number has changed, my email has rigorous filters, and my social media profiles have been cancelled or made private. Last week, I was offered a partnership track position, and the managing partner commented that my management of the family problem demonstrated the kind of backbone they look for in a leader. Without the continual drain of family expectations, I've been able to focus on my profession. Rachel's parents have informally adopted me. I have standing Sunday dinner invitations, and her mother keeps accidentally cooking too much food. They urge that I attend their annual Cape Cod vacation. "Real family vacations don't involve stealing," Rachel's father quipped as we organized the trip. Mrs. Wilson has been helping me rediscover abandoned interests, and I've started taking photography classes, which I couldn't do in high school because it would have clashed with my sister's practice schedule. The Wilsons are still my steady mentors. The extended family is still pushing for reconciliation. But what about the holidays? What happens when your parents are older? These queries used to make me feel guilty. Now they just remind me of how one-sided our relationship was. My therapist pointed out that my family's behavior follows a common pattern of financial abuse, which is veiled by cultural expectations of familial obligation. "You're not breaking family bonds," I was told. "You're breaking free from exploitation." The most significant shift has occurred internally. The worry that used to follow every phone contact, email, and bank alert has vanished. I no longer flinch when my phone calls or feel terrible about spending my own money on myself. Last weekend, I bought an abstract painting that spoke to me, and as I hung it, I realized it was the first time I had bought something solely for myself, rather than for someone else. My sister's most recent post accuses me of being callous for abandoning family. Nevertheless, I have not abandoned family. Rather, I have discovered my true family. It's Rachel's parents asking about my day, and they mean it. It's the Wilsons honoring my accomplishments without expecting anything in return. My coworkers are the ones who never hesitate to defend me. Sometimes I think of that little girl who ironed concert dresses and made dinners to get attention, and I wish I could tell her she deserved more. That being useful is not synonymous with being loved. The real family does not treat you like an ATM. I'm not an ATM. I'm not a support system. I am not a resource to be used. I am free. My sister-in-law's DNA kit to ruin my marriage backfired when her son's test revealed shocking truths about her own family. I met my husband James, in our late 20s, and we soon fell in love. We married after 2 years of dating and have had a lovely and quiet life together ever since. We welcomed our gorgeous kid, Nathan, and felt like the ideal family. I felt nothing could separate us until Sarah, my sister-in-law, decided to poke her nose into our life. Sarah and I have never gotten along. From the minute James introduced me to her, it was evident that we were not going to get along. I'm not saying I didn't try, but Sarah made no effort to care. She accused me of wanting to overshadow her at her wedding because I was dressed in a cream-colored gown. To clarify, Sarah intentionally chose cream-colored outfits for all of her bridesmaids. However, on her special day, it became about me stealing her spotlight. From then on, it was a never-ending game of sarcastic remarks, backhanded compliments, and petty behavior. If I wore a new dress, Sarah would say, "It's cute, but I liked it better when I saw it in the store last year." If Nathan accomplished something, she'd minimize it by comparing him to her own son, Tommy. Despite this, James and I always attempted to ignore Sarah's petty behavior. We wanted Nathan and Tommy to grow up as close as siblings. Things, however, took a nasty turn this past Christmas when Sarah decided to create havoc in an unexpected way. For Christmas, she gave Nathan one of those popular DNA test kits. At first, I didn't think much about it. Nathan has always been interested in science and enjoyed knowing about his family history. Nonetheless, it was not a typical present for a child. That night, James approached me privately. He told me Sarah had made some weird, almost cryptic comments to him, such as, "It's about time you got some answers," and "The truth always comes out." It didn't take long for me to put the pieces together. Nathan has green eyes, whereas James and I have brown ones. Of course, anyone with a basic understanding of genetics is aware that recessive features such as green eyes can pass down through generations. But Sarah had been making subtle, passive-aggressive statements for years, implying that James might not be Nathan's father. I was infuriated. Not only was she awful to us, but she was also involved with my son. We agreed to allow Nathan to take the test if he wanted to, knowing that the findings would confirm what we already knew. Nathan is our son, and the test would reveal nothing more. Nathan was enthusiastic about the science underlying the DNA test. He was excited to learn about his lineage and family roots, so we assisted him with the process, and he completed the test. Meanwhile, Sarah's son, Tommy, had been observing everything with great curiosity. Tommy, a curious 14-year-old, decided he wanted to take a DNA test too. Sarah's husband, Todd, thought it would make a good family activity, so they got a kit for him as well. What began as harmless curiosity quickly escalated into a family nightmare. Nathan received his results a few weeks later. Everything was as expected. James was clearly his father. But then we got the shock of our lives. When Tommy's results arrived, it was discovered that Todd was not his biological father. Sarah had an affair, and Tommy was not Todd's child. Todd was devastated. He had reared Tommy as his own, unaware that Sarah had been unfaithful. To make matters worse, Todd sought a paternity test for their younger daughter, who was just 7. The results confirmed his greatest fears. He wasn't her father either. Sarah's life was collapsing in front of her eyes, and it was not a quiet or private collapse. The entire family found out, and the consequences were harsh. Todd filed for divorce and left the house within a few days. The irony of the situation was hard to ignore. Sarah's attempt to undermine my marriage exposed her own lies. Tommy was the person who suffered the most. Nathan was also infected. He and Tommy had always been close, and seeing his cousin suffer through this upset him terribly. He began asking questions about why Tommy's father was no longer present, and it hurt my heart to hear how concerned he was for his cousin. Sarah's life deteriorated over time. Todd pressed for full custody of the children, seeking to limit Sarah's involvement in their lives. Sarah was a wreck at family gatherings, with a pale face and red eyes from crying. She appeared defeated. Sarah contacted me one day and requested assistance. She wanted me to talk to Todd and persuade him to lighten off on the custody agreement. She was trying to save what was left of her relationship with her children and turned to me for advice. At first, I was stunned. How could she have the arrogance to ask for my help after everything she had done to destroy my marriage and cause havoc at every opportunity? At first, I ignored her calls and refused to aid her. But as the days passed, I found myself wondering about Tommy. He was the real victim in all of this. Despite the fact that none of it was his fault, he bore the brunt of the pain. James, of course, warned me to keep out of it. He was confident Sarah had made her bed and would now have to lie in it. Part of me wondered whether I could help the youngsters involved find some serenity. It was not their fault that their mother made poor decisions. So I'm at a crossroads, confused about what to do. Should I help Sarah or let her suffer the repercussions of her actions? What would you do in my position? Update 1. I wanted to provide an update on what has occurred since my previous post, and I hope it puts some light on the complex situation we are dealing with. Sarah continues phoning me, and it's becoming exhausting. I expected her to cool down or back off soon, but she hasn't. She's relentless. On one especially horrible day, she called me 3 times in a row, leaving lengthy, sobbing voicemails. I could hear the despair in her voice, but I couldn't feel much pity. At one point, my husband James became so frustrated that he couldn't take it anymore. He called her himself. James rarely loses his temper, so when he called, I knew things had gotten out of hand. From across the room, I could hear his voice as he snapped, telling her he was tired of her insulting me and manipulating our family. After that chat, things became worse. Sarah's tone changed again. She began sending me multiple text messages, alternating between pleading for my assistance and accusing me of attempting to ruin her life. She was pleading for my help, telling me how much she wanted me to talk to Todd and repair things. The next thing I knew, she was calling me manipulative, alleging I was jealous of her and her family and intended to destroy her marriage. Throughout all, my main focus has been the children. They are innocent in all of this, but they are suffering the most. I can't quit thinking about Tommy and Nathan. Tommy's real father's identity must have been traumatic to him, and it's evident he's having difficulty processing it. It's difficult for me to see him suffer through this without being able to help. Nathan, on the other hand, isn't sure what's going on but feels something isn't right. We have explained it to him, but he is still too young to understand anything. We had a family gathering a few days ago, and Nathan wanted to play with Tommy like he did before. They used to be quite close, inseparable actually. However, when Tommy arrived, he was distant, quiet, and scarcely engaged with Nathan. Nathan wanted to play with him, but I had to make excuses, explaining that Tommy was weary. Meanwhile, Sarah continues to write me these long, theatrical notes. She messaged me yesterday, stating she felt betrayed by our family. I don't see how someone who was unfaithful might feel betrayed, yet she still appears unable to accept responsibility for her actions. It's always someone else's fault, mine, James's, Todd's, and never hers. James believes we should step in and assist Tommy, especially because he and Nathan are so close. However, he is also concerned about the ramifications of being too involved in Sarah's situation. We've been trying to strike a delicate balance between supporting the children and maintaining our personal tranquility, but it's been more difficult than we expected. Todd has begun to contact James, further complicating the situation. He's been trying to figure out what happened and wanted to chat about it. James reluctantly agreed to meet him for coffee. When he returned, he appeared more conflicted than ever. Todd is naturally devastated. He told James that he feels like his entire life has been a lie, and he is now trying to figure out how to co-parent with Sarah after everything that has occurred. Talking with Todd simply made James feel more torn. Todd is a kind man, who is only trying to do his best for his children, despite his awful situation. After hearing Todd's point of view, James feels even more divided about how to proceed. He wants to help, but we both know that getting too involved will drag us deeper into Sarah's chaos. It's difficult to determine what the appropriate decision is. Every time I see Tommy, I have an intense desire to help him. He's simply a child caught up in this mess, and he doesn't deserve it. Nathan continues asking why Tommy always appears so sad, and it kills my heart that I can't give him an honest reason. The more I think about it, the more divided I am between wanting to intervene and being terrified of being drawn into Sarah's tumultuous world. At the end of the day, all I want is to safeguard the kids. Tommy and Nathan deserve more, and it hurts to see them suffer as a result of their parents' sins. I don't know what the future holds, but I'm hoping we can find a way to resolve this without causing further harm. I'll keep you updated on what occurs, and once again, thank you for your ongoing support. Update 2. A lot has transpired in the last several days, so brace yourself. It's been a lot for all of us, and I'm not sure how much more I can take. First and foremost, Sarah chose to proceed with an official medical paternity test. She was dissatisfied with the results of the home DNA kit, arguing it was not a reputable source for making such a critical decision. To be fair, home tests have a margin of error, and I suppose she was hanging on to what little hope she had left. However, the results did not change. The medical paternity test verified the previous one's results. Todd is not Tommy's or his daughter's father. Sarah simply dug herself an even deeper hole. I was not surprised by the conclusion, but there was no space for uncertainty. Todd, in particular, appeared to be bracing himself for the worst, yet when the medical results arrived, I could tell he was still devastated. He appeared crushed, as if the last fiber of hope he'd been holding on to had been wrenched away. He had previously told James that he didn't expect any miracles, but there was always a small part of him that hoped the test was incorrect. Todd became more withdrawn after receiving the news. Todd apparently began researching after obtaining the results and tracked down the individual with whom Sarah was allegedly having an affair. Todd told James that this man was Sarah's coworker. He had suspected their relationship for a long time, but Sarah always dismissed it, claiming it was only work-related. Todd now understood everything. He remembered Sarah and this man being abnormally close, attending work parties together and messaging late into the night. She was continuously making explanations, assuring Todd that it was something innocent. But suddenly it seemed that all of our suspicions were being confirmed. Todd decided to face him. He traced him down to his residence and entered without alerting anyone. Todd, according to what I learned later, was not in a healthy mental state. He was upset, angry, and searching for answers. Things suddenly got out of control. The man initially disputed everything, but Todd refused to accept it. It quickly escalated into a shouting confrontation, and it wasn't long before it became physical. Neighbors heard the disturbance and phoned the cops. By the time authorities arrived, Todd and the man had been bruised. Todd was arrested for assault and now faces prosecution. It's a mess. James had to travel to the police station to assist Todd. He posted bond, but Todd is now facing major legal issues. He claims that the fight was provoked, but this will be difficult to prove in court. This whole thing is spiraling out of hand, and I can't help but believe it's all because of Sarah's decision to keep the truth hidden for so long. Todd is breaking down, and it's heartbreaking to witness someone who was always so collected break down like this. Meanwhile, Sarah is urgently trying to contain the damage, but it is far too late. Todd has petitioned for full custody of the children. Sarah is in a panic. She's trying to persuade everyone that Todd is the problem, referring to him as a psychopath and citing the fight as proof of his instability and danger. She's frightened Todd will take the kids away, and she's lashing out at everybody who doesn't support her. Todd has been talking of moving to another state with the kids to put some distance between them and Sarah. He believes the children deserve a fresh start away from the mayhem. But I am not sure. I appreciate his desire to protect kids, but separating them from everything they know could be more harmful than beneficial. Legally, it will be a difficult battle. When I last saw Sarah, she looked like she hadn't slept in days. Her eyes were red and swollen, and she kept saying that everything was coming apart, that everyone was attempting to take her children away. It seemed as if she were experiencing a panic attack. Even so, she continues to regard herself as the victim in all of this. At this point, I believe we have no choice but to become involved. We're already caught up in this mess, whether we like it or not. James believes we should back Todd and assist him with the legal issues he is experiencing, especially since Todd appears to be the more stable father in all of this, which I think is a great idea. I'll keep you posted as things go, but for the time being, we're simply holding on and hoping for a resolution that doesn't absolutely wreck these children's lives. Update 3. I have a lot to say regarding all that has transpired since my last post. First, let's discuss Todd and the man Sarah had an affair with. You already know how Todd was detained after the confrontation became physical. Initially, we believed Todd might face significant assault charges, but the man opted not to press charges. Todd told us that this man wants to disassociate himself from the entire affair. He undoubtedly realized that getting engaged may make matters worse for him, both personally and professionally. Although this individual admitted to the affair when the police arrived, he has since severed relations with both Todd and Sarah. In some ways, that chapter of the story has come to an end, which I believe is for the best. Todd does not need to continue battling with someone who clearly has no regard for the consequences of his actions. Many people have questioned me about Tommy's sister and why I haven't said more about her. She's like Nathan, she's been informed what's going on but doesn't completely comprehend it. Outwardly, she does not appear to be as impacted. Deep down, I believe she is mourning in her own way, but she has not voiced it as much as Tommy has. Tommy is older and more mature, so he understands what's going on, and it appears to be hitting him harder. That's why I've focused more on him, even though both children are plainly victims of their mother's behavior. James and I are here to support both of them, regardless of who their parents are. Tommy's situation has deteriorated significantly. Some students at his school have started bullying him, which has resulted in fights. It doesn't help that Sarah is flooding his mind with beliefs that everything is his father's fault. Tommy knows his mother cheated on Todd and that Todd is not his real father. Despite this, Sarah has told him she did it because Todd was mean to her. This demonstrates that she would sooner ruin and divide her family than fight for it. That is, in my opinion, an awful thing to say. Todd, thus far, has fought for his children. All he wants is to get away from Sarah, which anyone can understand given how manipulative, devious, and unfaithful she is. I don't understand how the person who caused so much pain and turmoil can portray herself as a victim while continuing to damage the lives of others. But I suppose it's in her nature. She did what she did because she is a horrible person who would continue to act this way to the end, hoping to gain something from it all to make herself feel better. This is yet another reason why James and I believe a child should not grow up with an unfaithful parent. It is the worst possible model and influence for proper upbringing. We hope Todd gets complete custody because if Tommy continues to be affected by his mother, things will not go well for him. His younger sister will suffer considerably more because she is still young and does not completely comprehend what is going on. Over time, Sarah is likely to manipulate her and turn her against Todd. There's also a potential she'll end up acting like Sarah, believing her actions weren't that horrible and blaming others. At this time, both James and I are completely on Todd's side, and the children's as well. First, Todd truly wants to be a good father to them, but we also believe that neither Sarah nor the original father is what the children need. Their best hope right now is with Todd, and we'll help all three of them in any way we can. Even the whole of James' family, including my in-laws, is on Todd's side. Sarah's parents are not pleased with what she has done. For example, the other day, we chose not to attend a family gathering. On the one hand, we had another commitment, but we also wanted to escape the turmoil surrounding Sarah, and it was hard to watch Nathan go through everything Tommy is going through. At the occasion, Sarah began with her customary monologue, attempting to portray Todd as the story's villain. But my father-in-law intervened and told her to stop because she was only inflicting more harm and sorrow to everyone. He pointed at Tommy, who was sitting across the room, and asked, "Don't you understand the consequences of your mistakes? Don't you see how you're still hurting everyone? Your children, and we, do not deserve this. Accept your mistakes and behave maturely." My mother-in-law then went on to say that she had not trained her to act this way and hoped her granddaughter would not follow in her footsteps. Sarah threatened to leave the event with the children, but no one in the family supported her decision. My father-in-law said she could leave if she wished, but the grandchildren would stay. He told her that both kids needed to stay away from the commotion she had started and was still causing around her, and that he would bring them back later. Sarah left, and the children stayed to play. Later, my father-in-law called Todd to invite him to spend the day with them, and he didn't hesitate. My father-in-law reported the kids seemed considerably better, but it wasn't a miracle cure. Still, being separated from their mother is the greatest thing for them right now because her poison is hurting them, something no one in the family wants, except, obviously, Sarah. Sarah doesn't appear to care about her children, only about how she is seen and not losing anything. A true mother would not use these games to harm her children. Instead, she would endeavor to protect them from everything. However, a mother would not have cheated on her spouse. Still, here we are. Update 4. With the newest developments involving my sister-in-law and her children, better times are on the horizon for this family. To begin, my sister-in-law discovered Todd had been invited to my in-laws' house after she had departed, and she was not pleased. She went to my in-laws' house and challenged them because she believes they should be on her side rather than Todd's. My in-laws stated that they would always side with the children in this case, and that if Todd was beneficial to them, they would support him. This, in some ways, fueled Sarah's rage. After shouting, she grabbed an item from the front garden and flung it at her parents' car window. To summarize, it's a distinct issue. My father-in-law sued her, and she had to pay for the window. I mention this because it is relevant to the custody case later on. Todd's divorce went fairly smoothly. There was ample evidence that Sarah had been unfaithful, therefore Todd came out top in the divorce. However, no one really wins in a divorce, especially one prompted by infidelity. At the very least, Sarah could not take any more from Todd than she already had. I wouldn't say it was easy to obtain full custody of the children. Quite the reverse. But I'll tell you what happened. Todd won. It wasn't simple because Todd is not the children's biological father. He did, however, succeed after months of judicial proceedings. Some family members, including James and my in-laws, testified to Sarah's character. The car window incident did not help her case, nor did the fact that the judge was willing to contemplate handing complete custody to the father rather than the mother, which is unusual. The final nail in the coffin was the biological father's actions. This father simply showed up for selfish reasons. To avoid paying Sarah's child support if she had custody of the children. Sarah no longer has custody, so she has no grounds to sue him because she has no child-related expenses. I'm not sure Todd can demand anything from his biological father, but he hasn't indicated to us he intends to. According to my understanding, the biological father formally gave up his parental rights, as if it were an adoption. I'd like to add that I haven't followed every aspect of the case, so this is only my basic idea. The crucial issue here is that Todd has custody of both children. This has already begun to have results, particularly for Tommy and his sister, who have started therapy. Sarah can see her children, but only with supervision. My in-laws, on the other hand, can see the kids anytime they want, as long as Todd makes the decision, and so can we. This has also benefited Nathan, who is now able to play with Tommy as previously. There is still much work to be done, but things are gradually returning to normal, which is all that matters. I'm not sure what to tell you about Sarah. I haven't had much communication with her in a while. I blocked her and haven't heard anything from her since. She sends sporadic messages to her parents and James, but their relationship is pretty icy right now, and I'm not sure if it will ever change. My siblings received luxurious gifts, but I received body wash for our birthdays. Now that I'm moving out, everything is coming apart. I am a 25-year-old woman living with my parents. I have two siblings, Joseph and Katrina. As the oldest, I was the first to begin employment. For a long period, just my father and I worked to support the family. My mother was either ill or too weary to work. Over the years, I've realized that her condition is self-inflicted. She would rather sit on the couch all day, watching TV and overeating than work. I gave up trying to convince her to start working a long time ago. My brother and sister began working shortly after finishing school. Unfortunately, they were unable to hold their jobs for long. My brother was a robber, and my sister blamed her lack of employment on her mental condition. The temporary financial comfort we felt when they started working did not endure. I eventually had to take on additional shifts at work, knowing I couldn't rely on them. I worked hard to move forward in my company. Now, I make more than most individuals my age. Many people compliment me on my accomplishments, yet I feel like an imposter when I look back. I have not done anything for myself. 70% of my earnings goes toward home expenses, leaving me with only 30%. That quantity barely meets my needs. On top of that, there is always an unforeseen expense at the end of the month that I must cover. I work so much that I rarely come home, and when I do, it's a nightmare. At least I get paid for my job, but no one pays me to clean the house. I need to clean, do laundry, wash dishes, and make sure we have adequate groceries. My mother and sister barely contribute. My mother spends the entire day watching television, whilst my sister locks herself in her room and only comes out to hang out with her friends or get into trouble. I can't ask my father or brother for aid because they adhere to traditional gender norms. This is the type of family I come from. Although I disagreed with those ideals, I felt I had no choice because I was living in their home. Every time I tried to speak up, my mother told me to find my own place. She understands that I cannot afford my own house while also supporting the family. She also considers my heart is too sensitive to leave them to fend for themselves, or so she believes. None of this is the reason I am writing this piece. It isn't even the reason I'm so frustrated. My frustration stems from the fact that my parents have once again demonstrated their preference for my brothers over me. It was my birthday 2 days ago. My gift? Body wash. Yes, body wash. You might think I am ungrateful, but Katrina celebrated her birthday last month. She had a lavish surprise party that we couldn't afford. I had to take on more consulting work to help pay for it. This came after my father said he had enough money to pay for the party after I initially declined. After the party, he approached me with a sob tale about miscalculating expenses. He also told me that he had borrowed from bad people and was frightened they would harm us. To protect my family, I chose to pay for the party. I was very disappointed because they constantly do this. Whether it's a holiday or a birthday, they always prioritize my siblings' gifts before my own. This year, my brother received a new gaming system as a gift, while my sister received a certificate for our city's most costly spa. And me, I received body wash. After everything I've done for this family, is body wash all I deserve? I'm not sure why, but this time I was rather offended. Every time they did this, I found a method to get around it. I persuaded myself they didn't mean it, that they adored and valued me. However, I believe it is time to quit telling myself lies. That body wash was the final straw. I exploded after receiving it. I was unable to restrain myself. I got a tremendous lump in my throat, and my wrath overtook me. I asked them why I couldn't throw a big celebration like Katrina and Joseph. All I got was body shampoo, not even a good cake. My father became enraged and asked why I was being so disrespectful when I understood their financial predicament. At that point, I began laughing and asked him how he could say it with a straight face. He was the one who went into debt to ensure Katrina had a spectacular birthday celebration, but he couldn't afford more than $20 for mine. I was tired of being treated differently. At that point, I had to inquire whether I was adopted. Is that why they treated me like a stranger? I work hard at my job, come home, and take care of everyone, but all I receive is body wash. They must be kidding. My mother started crying at that point, saying she hated it when I had these little outbursts. So it's all right for her to have emotions, but when I display mine, I'm disrespectful to the family? That is exactly what I interpreted from her comment. She has hundreds of various emotions during the day, and we are expected to tolerate them. But if I get outraged over something legitimate, I'm labeled theatrical. Fine. I decided to quit arguing and go to my room. When they tried calling, I pretended to be asleep. I sat there for the entire time, just thinking. I was really unhappy. Even though I keep myself busy all the time, I am unable to fall asleep. My thoughts center on how sad I am. Most people my age are buying their first car, getting married, or purchasing a home. I see some of them at work doing just that. Even though they earn less than me, I am envious. Despite being ahead in my job, I am far behind in life. I have no identity or purpose in this world. My only purpose is to serve these ungrateful people. Now that I think about it, how did I allow them to treat me this way? It had been going on for so long that I had no idea they were taking advantage of me. My thoughts on this have grown extremely apparent as a result of the event with my birthday gift. Now I understand I don't want things to stay this way forever. Something needs to change. I feel like I'm accomplishing nothing with my life, and I'd like to know what I can do to alter that, to have my own purpose. Update 1. I did it. I moved out 2 months after my original post. I can't believe I moved out only 2 months after the birthday incident. My apartment is small and sparsely furnished, but it is mine. Do you want to know the first thing I did after I finished moving? I lay in my bed for hours, with no one phoning me to repair any minor issue. It was an odd sensation. I had no idea that resting in bed could be so cathartic. You're undoubtedly wondering how I moved, especially given my controlling family. It was not easy, but I completed it. First, I took their counsel and began setting boundaries. I merely paid the bare minimum for household bills and saved the remainder. I also took on more shifts at work and saved the money. When my parents inquired about the money, I explained that it would be included in my year-end bonus. It was difficult, but as soon as I gathered enough for the deposit, I told them to go to hell and moved into my new apartment. Once I had picked which apartment to rent, I informed my parents that I was leaving. It wasn't a pleasant conversation. They were enraged and inquired whether living with them was indeed that horrible. I assured them it wasn't about them, but about me. I was getting older and needed to get more independence. I couldn't do it if I kept living with them. Besides, Mom had always said I should get my own apartment. Of course, my mother was offended by my reply and labeled it snarky. She claimed to want only the best for me, but I mocked everything she said. I realized I couldn't win that fight, so I apologized and went on. My family was very resistant to my desire to emigrate, but there was nothing they could do. I'd already signed my lease and was prepared to go. In protest, none of them helped me pack. I had to approach a couple coworkers for assistance. Janet and Lisa, 2 acquaintances from separate divisions at work, were the only ones who were aware of my predicament at home. When I told them I was relocating, they jumped for delight. When I requested for aid with the move, they were more than happy to help. We completed transferring everything a few days ago, and now I am in my practically empty apartment. I don't have much, yet I'm satisfied. I can't wait to start living independently. Update 2. I've been living in my apartment for more than a month. It's been a tough month, but I'm happier than ever, or was until a few hours ago. Let me quickly recap what transpired over the last month. I've been furnishing my flat and even had a housewarming party. Also, now that I have my evenings free, I've begun to get out with friends and even meet new individuals through them. It is wonderful to finally have a social life after so long without one. Honestly, I think I'm finally living for myself. Aside from developing a social life, I've started dating someone Lisa introduced me to. In the past, I never went out with anyone since I didn't have time. My family was continuously disrupting my plans with some sort of emergency. But now that I live farther away, they can't do that. You're probably wondering how my connection with my family has fared over the last month. Actually, none of them had messaged me at all throughout this time. They've been unusually quiet, which has been disconcerting at times. I considered messaging them, but I stopped myself. I feel like I'm usually the one to break the ice and apologize after our disagreements. I do not want to be that way anymore. I want to be treated with the same respect as any other member of the family. So I opted not to reach out. For a while, I felt our relationship had ended. That was until my mother contacted me this afternoon when I was at work. I was astonished to see her name on the screen, but I responded. As soon as I picked up, she asked, "Where's the check?" At first, I was perplexed because I had no idea what check she was referring to. Had she forgotten that I wasn't living with them anymore? What were her thoughts? Anyway, she wondered how I expected them to function without my assistance. I told her that she had 2 healthy, capable children who could help pay the expenses. They've had a month to look for work. What have they been doing during that time? She then questioned how I could be so inconsiderate to my siblings' plight. So I questioned her how I could feel sympathy for a criminal and a lazy girl. They damaged their own job possibilities. Couldn't they learn from me and persevere? I told my mother that I was not going to send anything and that they needed to make their own plans. Then I hung up. She contacted me numerous more times, but I did not respond. Later, my father called and tried to reprimand me, but I hung up. I couldn't believe what I had done. I had never cut someone off while they were speaking before. But, to be honest, the last month has been so tranquil, and reconnecting with them has reminded me of how tumultuous my life once was. I don't think I want to upset my peace by reintroducing them into my life. I wish they had remained silent. They should have cut me off and left me alone because, in reality, I was never actually a part of the family. Now I see that they only wanted me for as long as I could provide for them. I was living an unsustainable lifestyle because I was always there to support others. But now that's over. I have hit my limit. It is time for me to focus on myself. I should have done this long ago. They have attempted to make me feel bad, but it isn't working. I believe it's because I'm now immune to it. Update 3. Honestly, I'm not sure what's wrong with my family. I can't believe I am related to such strange individuals. I knew they were capable of going to extremes to achieve their goals, but this is too much. I'm not going to be patient with them after this. They're about to witness a side of me they didn't realize existed. It had been 2 days since my relatives began pestering me for money. I've repeatedly told them that I'm not giving them anything. They need to devise their own plan. If they can't pay their bills, how can they expect me to support them when I already have my own expenses? It's totally irresponsible and irrational. I've been ignoring them for the past 24 hours, concentrating on purchasing additional furnishings for my flat. It's finally beginning to look like a house, and I'm really pleased with myself. I can't believe I now have items to call my own. Unfortunately, I can't truly appreciate this success because they've been so obnoxious. I've ignored them the entire time, which is presumably why they decided to come to my residence. Yes, they came to my flat last night while I was hosting a little gathering. Here's what happened. Yesterday was a Friday night, and a few of my pals wanted to go out. But I was too exhausted. Lisa and Janet agreed, so we planned a book and wine night at my apartment. 2 more girls joined us, and we were having a terrific time, until there was a disturbance outside the door. I live in a quiet apartment community, so this was concerning. We attempted to ignore it, but it became louder and soon reached my door. When I opened it, my sister, father, and brother were arguing with the building manager. They demanded to be allowed into my apartment since they were family. I couldn't believe what I was witnessing. I informed the manager that I knew them, but they were not welcome. My father looked hurt and claimed he only wanted to talk. I asked him to look at the time, which was 10 p.m. I informed them that if they wanted to see me, they could have called ahead. Also, how did they know where I lived? That's when my sister stepped in, stating she learned from a friend who had seen me at the complex. Then she looked around and noted that I was living large. She asked why she couldn't live with me. I looked at her like she was insane. Why would I want to live with someone who is so lazy? I would have to feed her and clean up after her. I have not forgotten the dynamics of the previous few years. I told them to go because they were not welcome, particularly at that hour. My father refused, saying they wouldn't go unless I spoke with them. I informed him that I was not interested in talking, especially since I had guests. Then my brother began ranting at the top of his lungs, addressing my friends and calling me a useless sister. He then forced his way into my flat and started verbally assaulting me. Between him, my sister, and my father, I felt completely overwhelmed. Meanwhile, my friends sat stunned, watching this horrific show. Things only got worse. My father and brother began rifling through my belongings and turning them upside down. I cried because I saw them treat my possessions so disrespectfully. I implored them to stop, but they did not listen. They said I was to blame and demanded a check. That is, until security arrived. It turned out that Janet had gone to contact security as soon as my father and brother began disrupting the calm. When security arrived, my father and brother refused to go and attempted to resist. That was a major mistake since the uproar became so loud that they had to call the cops. My father and brother are currently in jail for trespassing in my flat and disrupting the peace. They will not be released until Monday, and I have already filed charges. I am bringing them to court over this. They've gone too far, and I'm not going to let them get away with it. This marks the end. They've gone too far, and I'm not going to let them drag me farther into their mess. Update 4. I wanted to post an update sooner because it has been 4 months, but I chose to wait until everything was resolved. Now that the trial has ended, I can finally tell you everything. I think many of you will be relieved to know that my family received what they deserved. Starting with my brother, the judge was harsh on him because he had previously shoplifted and is a repeat offender. He was sentenced to 1 year in prison. Unfortunately, this will remain on his record, making it even more difficult for him to establish a future for himself. But, honestly, given the way he's been spending his life, he had little chance. I'm hoping that his time in jail would straighten him out and help him set priorities. I've seen folks considerably younger than him who have significantly more structured lives. My father had to pay a fee to the court and is currently on probation. If he even receives a traffic ticket, he's done. He needs to be really cautious for a time. Otherwise, he'll wind himself in jail. Both the judge and the city take these transgressions very seriously, which is why they have met with severe punishments. Now, about my mother. Years of gluttony and idleness have now caught up with her. She is at high risk of heart disease due to her poor lifestyle. Because of how quickly her health is deteriorating, doctors estimate she has less than 2 years if she does not make radical adjustments. Knowing her, she probably doesn't care because she believes she will live forever. I tried for years to convince her to eat healthier, but she never listened, so I gave up. If her high cholesterol does not kill her, my sister most likely will. Speaking of my sister, she's been the talk of the town lately, and not for the right reasons. Since money has been tight and no one is funding her lifestyle longer, she decided to take matters into her own hands. She somehow became acquainted with the wrong crowd, girls who were rumored to be selling certain items on the street corner. It is both unlawful and highly harmful. I heard about a week ago that she had been detained for doing something questionable. I wouldn't be surprised if she ends herself in a physically perilous situation as a result of her chosen route. People have asked me to speak with her, but she chose this life. Honestly, she probably thinks I'm stupid for working an honest job. No insult to anyone in that business, but I've witnessed what some of these girls go through. There is no happy ending in sight for her, only substance misuse, additional jail term, and perilous situations. My mother has fallen multiple times as a result of the stress that Katrina has caused. But Katrina still lives with our parents, so they are enabling her conduct by allowing her to be there. Even though she is making money, she is definitely not spending it appropriately or paying her responsibilities. You are undoubtedly wondering how I know all this. I found out from a credible source. My parents are now receiving food stamps, and my father's working hours have been decreased. He spends most of his time at home, with my mother and Katrina. I can only imagine how hungry everyone must be in that house right now. But it isn't all for them. In addition, they must compensate for the damage they caused to my flat. I was able to recover the items they damaged, but they still need to pay the money the judge ordered. I feel sad for them, but not enough to intervene and help. It's what it is. They made their decisions, and now they must live with the consequences. Update 5. I have an update on several recent events, and the truth is that my family is falling deeper into the troubles that, as I frequently repeat, they made for themselves. They are the type of people who try to dig themselves out of a hole. I'm not sure if there is a way back for them, but I do know that it is not my obligation to get them out of the holes they've dug themselves. And they keep getting deeper. To begin with, my father, who was supposed to pay for the damage he and my brother committed in my apartment, just did not do it. Many of the comments I received in my last update predicted this outcome, and they were correct. The worst part is that this time he didn't even try. He made no effort to demonstrate his willingness to comply with the judge's instruction. However, the judge was correct when he cautioned that any failure would result in his return to prison. A sneeze may land him in jail, which is exactly what occurred. It wasn't a real sneeze, but the fact that he didn't pay what was ordered resulted in a trip to jail. I discovered a few days ago that he is currently serving time there. The irony of the situation is that my father was, in theory, the only one working in that house. I'm not sure how my mother will cope without him now that he's in prison. The last time I spoke with someone close to the family, they said there was almost no food in the house. Given my mother's health issues, this is really frightening. But, to be honest, all I feel is a frigid remoteness from the entire thing. For years, I was the one who kept that house afloat, and they emotionally and financially abused me. They are now paying the price for their own recklessness. On top of that, my mother is alone in the house, not only because my father is in jail, but also because my brother and sister are now behind bars. My brother had already been in jail for a while, as you may recall, but now my sister has joined him. Yes, her business venture ended just as expected. She was arrested. Everyone saw it coming, except her. Her condition worsened when she began using in addition to selling, leaving her even more vulnerable and without much judgment. An undercover detective caught her in the act, putting an end to her attempt to maintain an unsustainable lifestyle. Now she's awaiting trial, but I don't think she'll come out unscathed. The worst aspect is that she cannot afford professional counsel, therefore she is represented by a public defender. I do not mean to be unkind, but I do not see much hope for her. As for my mother, I honestly don't know what will happen to her life now. She is staying in the house that previously housed 5 people, but it is now completely empty. My father is in prison, my sister is awaiting trial, and my brother has already served time. The house is emptied, and the saddest thing is that she has no one to care for her. For years, she did nothing but rely on others to bring her money and food. She can scarcely leave the house anymore due to her health difficulties. I'm not sure how she'll survive. I know they get food stamps, but that isn't enough to survive on. In short, my family has entirely disintegrated. All I have left is my peace, and while it may sound harsh, I do not regret having removed myself. Update 6. I feel horrible for having to deliver bad news, but it's no longer my bad news, it's my family's. Despite the fact that everything is unfolding in slow motion, I can't help but feel relieved that I am not personally involved in this disaster. To begin, I have finally regained my money. It wasn't an easy process, and as expected, my father didn't have the money to pay me. The only reason Dad ultimately did was because my mother had to take out a loan to bail him out of jail. The fact that my father was in jail for contempt made matters even more problematic, but she eventually received the money after considerable work. Of course, it was not her own idea, but rather my mother's desperate desire to get my father out of jail. My father's release from jail is arguably the only bright aspect of this predicament. During this period, my mother had been living with a relative while attempting to resolve my father's legal issues. She left the house for an extended period of time, and as one might imagine, it was abandoned. Now, the neighborhood we lived in was never ideal, particularly for leaving a house unsecured. Apparently, it has been vandalized and completely looted. The most worrisome aspect is that according to what I've been informed, there are people living there now. People who, from what I understand, may be previous clients of my sister. The fact that people are squatting within the house is only the beginning of the problem. Still, if my parents are able to remove them, which I doubt will be easy, I'm not sure whether what remains is still a house. It bothers me to think about the state of the place I once called home, especially since I put so much time and effort into keeping it up when I was still living there. But at the end of the day, it is no longer my home. It's not in my name, and it's not my responsibility to solve it. My parents will have to face this on their own. My siblings continue to serve their sentences. There have been little updates on that front. What surprises me the most about all of this is how quickly the situation deteriorated after my departure. It's as if my departure was the final nail in the coffin of a scenario that was already decaying from within. My boyfriend dumped me over red flags, his best friend made up. He begged to return, but I made him confront her before cutting him off. I, 23F, had been with my boyfriend Eric, 24M, for about 8 months. Eric had never had a long-term relationship before, and most of his ex-girlfriends were flings that lasted only 3 or 4 months. Naturally, I love to believe that this relationship was meaningful for him. But a few days ago, I discovered that may not be the case. Eric's best buddy, Olivia, 24F, has been his neighbor for more than 14 years. They met when they were 10 years old and have remained inseparable since. They attended the same school, college, and now work in the same place. When I say best friend, I mean it. Eric never does anything without consulting Olivia first. Even the decision to date me was not totally his own. He later told me that every lady he'd ever dated had to get Olivia's approval first. If Olivia asked him to end the relationship, he would. I believe this explains why his previous relationships failed. Eric only told me about this 4 months into our relationship, stating he believed it was time. I had already become strongly attached to him, so I chose to stay. Yes, I understand. Bad decision. If I had known about his unusual need for Olivia sooner, I would not have gone on a first date with him. My relationship with Olivia wasn't terrible, at least not until recently. Olivia and I met numerous times, and while we were polite, I had the impression she wanted to quietly show me that Eric would always be hers first. When it was just the three of us, she made me feel alienated and uncomfortable. Initially, I made every attempt to befriend her, but my efforts were futile. It appeared that she had already made up her mind against me. To make matters worse, I unintentionally made it into a competition between ourselves. She wasn't going to take it lying down. Finally, around 5 days ago, something occurred. I was feeling quite ill, and because I work away from home, I didn't have someone to look after me. My roommate was on a trip, leaving me completely alone. Normally, I wouldn't rely on a male, but this time, I called my boyfriend and asked him to come over and help me out. He was apprehensive at first, but I assumed it was because he didn't want to catch whatever I had. So I told him it was only a stomach illness and he will be okay. But, even so, he appeared reluctant. I asked him what was going on, and he said he was going to watch a movie and then have lunch with Olivia. He was unsure whether he'd be able to make it. I was already sick and not feeling well, and Eric was prioritizing Olivia over me. I had always understood that if it came down to it, he would choose Olivia over me, but it still hurt. I became incredibly furious off and told him he should date Olivia instead, then hung up. I didn't answer any of his calls after that. An hour later, Eric arrived and apologized for what he did. I was relieved when he arrived because, honestly, if he hadn't, I would have ended our relationship. He informed me that he had canceled his arrangements with Olivia and even brought me homemade soup. That day, I felt really positive about him. We spent the day together, and by the time he left that night, I was feeling much better. But I had no idea my actions would have ramifications. Eric stopped contacting me the very following day. No calls or texts for the entire day. I panicked a little, thinking something horrible had happened to him. I tried to contact him throughout the day but had no luck. At approximately midnight, he called me back. He talked in an entirely different tone, serious, even upset. After inquiring if I felt better, he suggested I sit down. Then he broke up with me. At first, I assumed it was a joke, but he kept talking. He said it was difficult for him to come to this conclusion, but he had finally understood that my conduct was nothing but a bunch of red flags, and that he couldn't stay with me any longer. I was completely confused. As far as I was concerned, I had not done or said anything to him that would have raised a red flag, at least not knowingly. I had always strived to be a decent person and a good girlfriend. This was a major shock for me. I didn't know what to say, so I remained silent as he informed me he couldn't be with me anymore. Then he hung up. The suddenness of it all astounded me. We had just had such a nice time together the day before, and now he was telling us we were overdue for red flags. It didn't make sense. I ended up weeping myself to sleep that night because I couldn't contact or text him for help. After we broke up, he blocked me everywhere. There was no way for me to receive closure or an explanation. Eric didn't even have the decency to break up with me in person, despite how long we'd been dating. He also did not provide a good explanation. For the next 2 days, I was extremely distraught and preoccupied at work and when completing housework. I just couldn't accept that it had ended so quickly. I kept repeating our last few exchanges in my thoughts, trying to figure out what had prompted him to suggest that I had a lot of red flags, but I couldn't come up with anything. The Olivia factor had not even occurred to me because I hadn't seen her in a few weeks and had forgotten how much she dominated Eric's life. Anyway, last night I finally got a call from Eric. I was taken aback because I hadn't expected it. I had just started to digest our separation, so it felt quite sudden. I answered the phone, and he immediately began apologizing. He didn't even give me the opportunity to say anything at first. He sounded hysterical, so I let him vent. He said he didn't want to break up with me. Olivia was the one who made him do it. Apparently, she disliked the fact that I forced him to cancel plans with her and convinced him that it was a red sign. She even brought up a few of other seemingly innocuous things I do to depict me as a giant red flag. Eric said he had fallen for it. Olivia, he claimed, had fed him a series of lies, alleging that I was attempting to build a rift between them and that this was a warning sign. She also distorted things like me preparing meals I like or buying clothes for him that I believed he'd look beautiful in, making them appear as manipulative efforts to control his life. I couldn't believe anyone would fall for such rubbish, let alone break up over it, but Eric was probably an idiot. He then apologized for everything and begged me to accept him back. He claimed he was willing to do whatever it required. My blood was boiling, so I said nothing for a time. I struggled to keep my rage under control. All this time, I blamed myself for the breakup, believing it was my responsibility. But now I see that was all Olivia's doing, and she was most likely fine with it. I should have expected her to try anything to get back at me. After all, I had stolen Eric from right beneath her nose. When I was sick, his decision to care for me and cancel our plans must have made her perceive me as a competitor. She couldn't have it, so she made sure we broke up. Everything suddenly made clear. Eric was pleading with me over the phone, imploring me to accept him back. He even had the arrogance to say that Olivia would no longer be a problem because he would keep our connection a secret from her. I was appalled. Even after all had transpired, he couldn't realize how much Olivia was in charge of his life. If he had broken up with me for another reason, I might have considered taking him back. But I couldn't believe he ditched me over something Olivia had said without considering for himself. Eric was clearly an imbecile. Whether or not he kept our relationship covert, Olivia would maintain control over him, and he would continue to do anything she wanted like a puppet. What upset me even more was Eric's refusal to recognize that Olivia might not have his best interests at heart. He was even willing to hide our relationship in order to keep their so-called friendship. This was a huge red flag for me. I had no intention of getting back to him. I had already made up my mind the moment he revealed the true reason for the breakup. I'd cried enough for this person, and he didn't deserve it, but I couldn't just let it go without trying to put Olivia in her place. That's why I did something so selfish and manipulative, and, while I'm not proud of it, I believe it was necessary. Last night, I told my boyfriend that I would only get back with him if he notified Olivia about his decision and confronted her for controlling his life. He'd have to inform her that she wasn't his employer and that he'd be getting back with me regardless of her. Only if he did that would I contemplate getting back together, because if Olivia humiliated me, I would undoubtedly reciprocate the favor. When I told Eric what I wanted him to do, he was horrified and tried to persuade me to reconsider, stating it was excessive and unneeded. He protested for a long, trying to get out of it, but I was determined. I informed him that I would only respond if he texted her what I had asked. Otherwise, he may say farewell and remain broken up. After a few more minutes of fighting, Eric finally gave in. He sent Olivia those texts and even provided me with a screenshot as proof. I instantly hung up and blocked him. I knew it was petty and cruel, but I couldn't help it. I'd been upset over the past 3 days about our breakup, and this was the least I could do to feel some sense of justice. AITA? Am I the asshole for forcing Eric to send Olivia those texts, especially since I had no intention of responding in the first place? Update 1. It's been 2 days since I spoke with Eric, and he hasn't been able to reach me since. Olivia is unable to contact me since I have also blocked her. I initially felt awful about what I forced Eric to do, but after reading the replies below, I realize I don't have a good reason to feel that way. Eric had a choice, and he chose to send Olivia those texts because he wanted to be with me rather than her. It's not like I held him at gunpoint. He did exactly what he desired. Yes, lying to him about getting back together was wrong, I accept it, but I don't believe what I did was as horrible as what had happened to me. He didn't think twice before convincing me that I was the red flag in our relationship when it was truly him all along. He did everything his so-called BFF requested him to do, regardless of how it affected me or his own life. He had no idea how bad I felt throughout the time we were apart. I had no answers and started overthinking what I'd done, which just made me more puzzled. So forgive me if I don't feel too awful about what I did. I haven't told anyone about my breakup with Eric yet, but I assume I'll have to start shortly. Only a few hours earlier, one of my friends invited Eric and me to her birthday celebration. When I arrive without him, I will have to explain his absence. I'm dreading that part because I'm not sure what I'll say when people ask why we broke up. Especially since we were happy on the surface. I'll have to come up with something, but that's okay. At the very least, I am done with that relationship. Update 2. Hello everyone, it's been over a week since I broke up with Eric. I assumed that blocking Eric and his BFF Olivia would mean that I'd never have to interact with them again. Unfortunately, this was not the case. This morning, I received a call from a number I did not know. Naturally, I let it ring the first time, but when they called again, I responded. It was Olivia on the phone. As soon as I heard her voice, I was prepared to hang up because I had absolutely no desire to chat with her. But then she warned that if I hung up, it would only reveal that I was a coward and frightened to confront her. I should not have let it affect me, but it did. So I stayed on the call. Olivia then went on to say terrible things about me right in front of my face. She called me a variety of names for what I'd done, including a sneaky little liar, and expressed her relief that Eric and I had split up since he was too good for me. Then she called me the B word, which really irritated me, and I snapped. I told her just what I thought of her. I told her she was nothing more than Eric's backup girlfriend and would most likely spend her entire life trying to keep other girls away from him so she could have him all to herself. I believe I struck a nerve with that one because, as soon as I said it, she began fumbling and sounding like she was about to cry. I took advantage of that and went even further. I informed her that she could scream at me all she wanted, but Eric had the option not to send her those texts. It was his decision, and he chose me over her. That was the final straw. On the other end, I could hear her start crying. I didn't feel sorry for her because she'd called to make me feel awful. But here she was, crying. I'm not sure if she and Eric are still on speaking terms, but I hope she runs to him and complains about what I said. If they come after me again, I'd love to put both of them in their place and remind them that I'm not someone they can mess with and get away with it. They aren't the only ones who have the right to damage others' sentiments. They need to realize that if they're comfortable handing it out, they should be equally comfortable receiving it. Update number 3. Hey, there. Olivia called me 2 days ago, and the conversation ended horribly for her. Like I stated, I was hoping Eric would confront me about it so I could tell them both off. That finally occurred today. The person who introduced us was hosting a party, and we were both invited. She was unaware that Eric and I had ended our relationship. Eric entered the party about an hour in, accompanied by Olivia. They both appeared ready to battle. I drew my friend aside and recounted the entire issue to her. I even offered to depart early in case things went wrong. While I wanted to cause a spectacle, I didn't want it to happen on my friend's birthday and steal the spotlight from her. It would not have been nice. But my friend suggested I stay. She admitted that she wouldn't mind if we confronted one another at the party because she wanted to see the drama play out in person, especially after what I'd told her. I had the decency to ignore Eric and Olivia since, if anyone was going to start a fight, it had to be them. I was classier than that. But when it came to teaching them their place, I was willing to fall to their level. Eric approached me about a half hour after they arrived at the party, while I was speaking with another guy. I wasn't flirting, just making normal small talk. I believe he simply wanted an excuse to put me down because he walked up and loudly stated that I had already moved on from him. He then called me a cheater and a phony in front of everyone. Olivia appeared behind him with a malicious smirk. I swear I wanted to slap that nasty smile off her face, but I managed to restrain myself. Eric was spouting crap right in my face, even bringing up the phone call from a few days ago. He said I was mistaken about Olivia being the backup since, in fact, I was the backup and not worth dating. I laughed in his face since, if I recall correctly, he was the one who came crawling back to me just days after dumping me over what Olivia had told him. He'd had his say. Now it was my chance to reveal him and his loving BFF for who they really were. I told him that both he and Olivia were much below my level. He should have counted himself lucky that he could persuade me to date him in the first place. As far as I was concerned, he was Olivia's spineless puppet, and no other woman would want him. At the very least, I was willing to give him a chance, but he blew that as well. Furthermore, his so-called BFF was depressed and insecure enough to want to end our relationship simply because he spent a day with me while I was unwell. She even utilized a new phone number to reach me, indicating how essential I was to her. Honestly, her acts betrayed her insecurity and pitiful nature. They were an ideal complement for one another. I genuinely hoped they got together because no one should have to cope with individuals like them. By then, the party had come to a halt. Everyone stared at us silently. Eric had nothing to say and simply stared at me. Olivia, without a clear response, began flinging expletives at me. She got up in my personal space, plainly trying to get me to punch her so she could retaliate. But I maintained my calm. I didn't even want to touch her. Eric decided to leave when she began to have a breakdown. They obviously did not want to be any more ashamed than they already were. Once again, their pitiful little attempt to humiliate me had failed. Eric had to literally drag Olivia away because she refused to accept defeat. After they went, my friend approached me, told me how awesome I was, and we all laughed about what occurred. We resumed partying and finished the evening on a high note with cocktails and a delicious dinner. I'm pleased with what happened because I got the closure I needed. Update 4. Hey everyone, here's a little update. I just found out that Olivia and Eric are finally together, LOL. It's been 3 months since our little altercation at the party, and I guess they recognized I was correct. No other reasonable person would put up with them separately, so they chose to date each other instead. I heard this from a friend of a friend, as I no longer communicate with any of them. As for me, I'm seeing a new guy who is exactly my type. I hope this works, And that he doesn't have a psycho best friend that he hasn't told me about. My toxic best friend overstepped by claiming maid of honor, disrupted wedding plans, and planned her wedding on my date to create chaos. Original post. Some background info about this girl. Let's call her Jess. At this point in her life, she's kind of a hot mess. She's one of those people who airs everything on Facebook, who has a new love of my life every month, and a new best friend every few months. Her relationships and friendships usually end terribly, with both sides hating each other. How did I become her best friend? Well, she hasn't always been this way. She was relatively normal 5 years ago when I met her, save for the normal, early 20s drama. But in the last 2 years, she's lost her mom to cancer and her grandpa to old age, and she doesn't have any other family. She dropped out of school and found out her boyfriend at the time was cheating on her. After the breakup, I was acting like a shoulder to cry on since she had pretty much hit rock bottom. A few months later, she was telling everyone how close we were and started tagging me as her best friend. A few months ago, I got engaged. Unbeknownst to me, she started telling everyone she was my maid of honor, even though I've always planned on making my sister my maid of honor. But this was right after Jess's mom had died, so I just improvised and said I would have 2 maid of honors. It's still not what I would have liked, but I literally couldn't bring myself to tell this poor girl I don't consider her my best friend. That was my first mistake. About a month after I got engaged, she met a guy. 2 weeks later, she was engaged. A week later, she was married. A month later, she was divorced. Separated? I don't know if it's legal yet. I don't know if anything was legal, but she changed her last name and is still going by that, so I'm guessing it was legal. Ever since the divorce, my own wedding planning has become unbearable. She is constantly telling me how marriage doesn't work, love can't save things, etc., etc., and criticizes how much I'm spending on my wedding when she had hers for a few hundred. Vegas wedding? It's gotten to the point where she's rude to the vendors I'm meeting with, but she gets really upset when I don't take her to meetings since she's the maid of honor. So I'm at the point where I just want to cut her out of the wedding, like I should have done in the first place. However, when I confessed this to a mutual friend, my friend let me know to be careful because Jess can be really vindictive. When she found out her ex from a few years ago was getting married, she tried to contact the bride and tell her he was cheating on her. He wasn't. One of her last besties was fired from her job because Jess made multiple email accounts and regularly contacted customer service complaining about her. And since she knows so much info about my wedding already, I'm really terrified that she'll somehow try to sabotage it. So basically, I don't know what to do at this point. I feel like this wedding is getting away from me, but I also don't know if it'd be less painful to keep her a part of it, because it would save me all the drama. I don't know what she's capable of, so I'm really worried that she'll somehow make everything harder for me if I don't just grin and bear it. Help. Clutter girl I've been comforting through traumatic times turns out to be batshit crazy, and now I think she's going to ruin my wedding if I don't go with the flow. Relevant comments. Comment 1. To add, it might be a good idea to have passwords with your vendors to confirm your identity. OP, thank you for the advice. I was actually considering the password thing, but I don't know if that's taking things too far. I guess I'm kind of worried about vendors resenting me for being high maintenance. But I hear about bridezillas, momzillas, in-lawzillas all the time, so hopefully this isn't the worst they've seen. Comment 2. Jesus just told her, Jess, you knew him for 3 weeks before you married him. What in the ever-loving fuck did you think was going to happen? If I've only been seeing a girl for 3 weeks, I won't even poop with her in a half-mile radius. Oops, seriously, the week before the wedding was everyone kindly saying, you sure? You've known him for awfully short time. And she responded, everyone's jealous because they can't be us. Yeah. Comment 3, sounds like you need to have a very uncomfortable talk with this girl. Tell her what you told us here and let her know her negative attitude has no place in planning your wedding. You're sorry things aren't working out for her, but she is not allowed to pile this stuff on you. Tell her that you cannot have her as a maid of honor, and since she seems to think so negatively about marriage, you wouldn't expect her to do this. Up to you if you even let her attend the wedding as a guest. Oh my God, I haven't even thought about explaining how her negative attitude towards marriage could be the excuse for not having her in the wedding party. That sounds ridiculously logical, but I've been blinded by a flurry of crazy. Thank you. Update. Guys. This went full-blown crazy. Before I could have a conversation with Jess, she confronted me about it. Apparently the mutual I confided in let the whole story leak and a twisted, more dramatic version made its way back to Jess. Shit, meet a fan. It was an hour or two of me trying to explain to Jess in a somewhat calm manner that I felt she had overstepped her boundaries, and it was really taking a mental toll on me while she yelled about what a terrible friend I was and how she's tired of putting all of her faith in the wrong people, and how she was tired of trying her best to be a good maid of honor. I made the mistake of pointing out that I had never asked her to be my maid of honor in the first place, and she responded with, "Well, then I must be delusional. The first step is admitting you have a problem, so progress." Needless to say, we aren't on speaking terms. Shortly after that, I took all of your advice and called all of my wedding vendors and let them know that my fiancé and I were going to be the only people making any decisions, and set up a confirmation word with them. Apparently this shit happens a lot because nobody even asked why. I accidentally forgot to contact the bakery making our cake, but luckily they called me and asked if I was certain I wanted to cancel the wedding cake. Apparently there was a voicemail left on their machine. Wonder how that happened. Here's where things get really nuts. A few weeks after our blow-up, she apparently met some guy who is the love of her life. A few weeks after that, they're engaged. I can't make this shit up. She did it again. Then our mutual friends get invitations for her wedding, which is the same date as mine. But since they had RSVP'd for my wedding, a lot of them couldn't make it. A few days before her wedding, they have to cancel because he's already married. And you know what? So is she. I guess she never got officially divorced from that first quickie wedding. So as far as I know, no wedding actually happened. I have no idea if they still plan to. I'm just glad to be away from that circus. But anyways, I got married a few weeks ago. Everything was wonderful, the weather was great, and everyone present was a joy to be around. Except maybe my uncle, who gets a little too dancy when he's drunk, but you know. Family. Thank you to everyone who responded, and to everyone letting me know I'm not helping matters by going with the flow. I will be actively practicing caution when making friends, by running from crazy and not comforting it. Relevant comments. Comment 1. Anyone else think mutual friends are kind of shitty? She was the one who told OP to be careful about Jess, yet she decided it would be a good idea to blab about what OP told her, knowing full well it would get back to Jess. Now instead of telling Jess on her own terms, OP got ambushed instead. OP. I actually asked her about it a few days after the blow-up. Her defense was that she didn't actually tell Jess, she told another mutual friend of ours, who told someone else, who told someone else, who told Jess, so technically it wasn't her fault. Which is how by the time it got to Jess the story was somewhere along the lines of, OMG, Bubble Sex 1 is telling everyone you're ruining her life and sabotaging the wedding. All of us met at work, we all worked at the same restaurant long ago, and it was always a drama-filled place. A lot of the same people still work there and still thrive off of the drama. I'm thinking it's time for me to move on from that specific crowd. Cliques are fun in middle school. In your 20s, not so much? Comment 2. I will be actively practicing caution when making friends. By running from crazy and not comforting it. I'd like to nominate the first candidate for your new policy. The mutual friend, who somehow let the story leak, and repeated to Jess a twisted, more dramatic version of what you had confided in her. OP. I've decided to distance myself from that crowd. We're at different points in our lives, and I just don't find gossiping all that fun. My real besties, from high school who were all bridesmaids, have all grown up and we would never pull this crap. Comment 3. I bet Jess was never actually getting married this time. It was just a plot to ensure at least some of your friends didn't make your wedding. Oop. I suspect that as well, but since she's done it before, I wouldn't be surprised if she actually went through with it. I'm assuming they were both trying to get divorced before the wedding and realized they wouldn't be able to in time, because you know, some stuff takes time and can't be erased in a jiffy, so they couldn't do it. I get the feeling this guy is either really stupid or just as crazy as she is, so at least they've found each other? Am I the asshole for refusing to help my father and stepmother and telling them they deserve the karma hitting them hard right now? So, when I was around 16, my father, 44 million, began seeing my stepmother Julia, 30 million, and they married 2 years later. Just to clarify, this woman never liked me. She's the reason I was kicked out of my house at 19. Since then, I haven't spoken with either my father or her, until a few days ago, when my father arrived at my place to talk. I'll get to that later, but first, I need to explain what went wrong so you can see who Julia truly is. My mother died when I was just 9 years old. My father had been in other relationships since then, but he was completely committed to Julia from the start. She moved in with us within a few months. Even though she was only a few years older than me, she required me to address her as mom. At the time, I was 16 and she was 24. We were just 8 years apart in age. I never called her mom, or saw her as maternal, since I thought it was inappropriate. Even if she had been older, I doubt I would have addressed her as mom, because my biological mother had died only 6 years earlier. I wasn't prepared to start calling someone else mom, and replacing her so quickly. Furthermore, when Julia made her request, she had only been with my father for 8 months. They might take their relationship at their own pace, but that didn't mean I had to accept her into my life at the same rate, especially since she hadn't tried to get along with me. I calmly informed her that I would not feel comfortable referring to her as my mother because I did not feel linked to her or saw her as a maternal figure. I don't believe I was impolite, but she began to pick on me for no apparent reason after that. She would either be extremely hostile or completely ignore me. It was strange, and it was evident that I refused to address her as mom. I never understood why it was important to her. As far as I was concerned, my father adored her and had totally accepted her as his companion. That should have been enough, but she was fixated on being my mother. She even behaved like she was, albeit not in a good or compassionate manner. She would order me around and pretend to have authority over me. It was as if she wanted to establish herself as a capable mother figure. This behavior bothered me. I'd remind her that she wasn't my mother and didn't need to be so involved in my life since I wasn't ready to give her the responsibility. She'd complain to my father, we'd argue, and things would become uncomfortable. But, in the end, my father and I loved each other enough to reconcile despite Julia. This was how we spent nearly 4 years. After they married, I assumed Julia would start acting normally because she no longer had any reason to be insecure. However, their marriage made her even more determined to become my mother. A few months after their wedding, she sat me down for the same conversation. This time, she said she would love it if I called her mom, since now that she and my father are married, it will help complete our family. She required that I acknowledge her as my mother before anything could happen. By then, I'd seen her true colors. I couldn't believe she had the arrogance to demand that I call her mom, after mistreating me for the previous 4 years. I wasn't especially pleased with their marriage because I knew she didn't like me, and to be honest, I didn't care for her either. I've never been one to mince things, and at 18, I made that abundantly plain to her. After the way she had treated me over the previous 4 years, I had no desire to accept her as my mother or assist her in realizing her dream of a perfect family. I advised her to concentrate on being married to my father and stop worrying about becoming my mother because it was pitiful. I informed her that I already had a mother, whom I adored, and that just because she died in an accident didn't mean the post was open. In very straightforward and respectful terms, I told her that I was not going to replace my mother and that she should stop trying. I also added that her fixation with being my mother was strange, scary, and completely unappreciated, especially given how brutally she had treated me simply because I refused to call her mom. I'm not proud of it because it wasn't very nice, but I did hint that her obsession was psychologically abnormal. That remark evidently irritated her, since she stopped speaking to me entirely following that chat. It was as if I didn't exist for her. At the time, I didn't think it was an issue. In fact, I was relieved when she eventually decided to stop bothering me. About a year later, I understood she had used that time to turn my father against me. It happened so gradually that I didn't realize my father was distancing himself until it was too late. When I realized, I attempted to fix things. I tried multiple times to bond with him, hanging out, talking, and reconnecting, but he was either too busy or constantly with Julia. I recognized that his priorities had evolved after his second marriage, and I attempted to give them space. But it backfired because Julia took up all of his available space in life. Things only got worse after I moved away to college. Whatever little communication I had with my father was vanishing as well. It felt dreadful, and I knew I needed to do something about it. One weekend, I planned to surprise my father by going home. I anticipated him to be pleased, but he appeared annoyed. He informed me he had planned to go out to dinner with Julia, but now that I was home, he couldn't do so. I found this quite offensive and challenged him about his actions. I told him he was acting aloof and strange, and it pained me that he wasn't even pleased with my surprise visit. I conveyed that it felt like he no longer cared about me. In despair, I lashed out at Julia, accusing her of turning him against me. This evolved into a full-fledged argument. My father told me that he knew I had something against Julia since the beginning. He said Julia wasn't attempting to turn him against me, but rather I was trying to turn him against her. He accused me of trying to brainwash him into thinking Julia was the bad guy, despite the fact that she had done everything she could to win me over. According to him, I was the one who turned down her attempts to bond because I did not want to betray my mother. He even suggested my mother would be upset with my behavior. My father informed me that making up tales about Julia to build a wedge between them would not succeed. Over time, I saw that Julia was gradually changing the narrative, telling my father that I had been ignoring and mistreating her from the beginning. Whenever my father was around, she was nothing but lovely, leading him to believe she was incapable of being mean to anyone. He gradually came to believe her account of events. He assumed I was causing issues because I couldn't accept Julia as his wife or come to terms with his departure. This was far from the truth, but my explanation fell on deaf ears. He accused me of attempting to sabotage their relationship and lying about Julia. Then he issued an ultimatum. Either I start respecting Julia, call her mom, and accept their relationship, or I leave. When my father said this, I didn't bother to argue. I hadn't unpacked anything yet, so I grabbed my bags and marched out, never looking back. After that, I went directly to my uncle's place. He was the closest relative I had. He's my mother's older brother and has always had a warm spot for me. I knew that no matter what challenges I had, he would assist me. At the time, I hadn't told my uncle much about Julia. I already knew he didn't like her or support my father's connection with her. Part of this was due to his loyalty to my mother, and part of it was because he thought the age difference between my father and Julia was too great. I didn't want him to detest my father any more than he already did, so I kept quiet. However, after I was kicked out, I told everything to him. He was infuriated. He told me that I had done the right thing by refusing to call her mom, and that Julia was a complete nutcase. He also called my father an absolute moron for believing all of her falsehoods. Once he realized the truth, he told me that he would take care of everything. He offered to cover all of my expenditures, including college tuition, which had previously been my father's burden. He also said that if I ever needed a place to stay, I could always come to him. Even after I graduated, he promised to help me out. True to his word, he supported me every step of the way and has become more of a father to me over the last 6 years than my biological father ever was. As I previously stated, I have not had touch with my father or Julia in 6 years. No one else in the family has. After I told my uncle everything, he was so enraged that he told everyone. I didn't ask him to do anything, but he was too angry to worry about the implications. He notified both my mother's and father's side of the family about the incident. According to what I've heard, no one has contacted my father or Julia since I was kicked out, as they were all against what had transpired. According to my uncle, several individuals attempted to persuade my father to listen, but he refused. He accused me of lying and said they should not trust me. Fortunately, my family knows I am not the person my father and Julia portrayed me to be. As a result, my father and Julia have been forced into extreme isolation. However, I doubt they care because they have not contacted anyone in the last 6 years. On the other hand, I'm doing well for myself. Following graduation from college, I began interning at my uncle's real estate firm. I eventually obtained my real estate license and relocated earlier this year from my former apartment to a much larger one in a more desirable location. I am no longer concerned about my finances. I've even started paying my uncle back, despite his insistence that he doesn't want anything from me. My financial situation is crucial because I believe it is what prompted my father to contact me again. Karma seemed to have caught up with him and Julia. A few months after giving birth, Julia was engaged in a horrific accident. She is currently bedridden and unable to move. My dad paid me a visit a few days ago. During our talk, I discovered that he had quit his job a few years before to start his own firm. Unfortunately, things haven't been going well because the epidemic struck shortly after he started. He has been experiencing financial difficulties. Furthermore, Julia refused to work, leaving him with sole responsibility for financial management. This circumstance is not surprising to me. Julia quit her work shortly after they got married, which he chose to disregard. Things got even more difficult financially when she found she was pregnant and decided to keep the kid. She gave birth approximately 6 months ago. Then, last month, she was involved in a horrific accident while driving herself home from lunch with her friends. She totaled the automobile due to icy roads and a little too much champagne. Fortunately, she was not charged, but it doesn't matter because she severely hurt herself and is now bedridden, unable to move as she heals. My father is in a bad situation because their medical insurance does not cover hiring a nurse. He needs to pay for one out of pocket because he can't stay at home to care for Julia and must work to prevent bankruptcy. Meanwhile, they've been leaving their kid with Julia's parents, but her parents just informed my father that they couldn't watch the child every day because they needed to live their own life. This resulted in a dispute between my father and Julia's parents, with him accusing them of being greedy. As a result, they refused to look after the baby anymore. My father, now out of alternatives, admitted he had no one else to turn to and chose to contact me for assistance. When he paid me a visit, he recounted everything in the hopes that I would intervene. Without hesitation, I declined. I'm not good around newborns, and I definitely didn't want anything to do with Julia's child. Given how much agony the two of them had given me in the past, I refused to allow myself to be used to solving their problems. I told my dad that, while it was good to see him, I was no longer here to serve his purpose. He became enraged, claiming he had gone to considerable lengths to obtain my contact information. From his statements, I deduced that he must have pestered some relatives until they informed him where I lived. I didn't think this was a great attempt, and his entitlement simply made me angry. I reminded him that when I needed him the most, when I begged him to believe me, he had refused. He chose Julia over me, and now I'm choosing myself over him. Despite my repeated requests, he refused to leave. I finally lost my patience. I warned him that if he didn't leave, I would contact the cops, which would end horribly for him. In a heated exchange, I informed him I had no sympathy for him and was not interested in assisting or forgiving him. I said he and Julia deserved all they were going through. After all, Julia had continually lied about me, portraying me as the monster. My father had decided to trust her falsehoods and prioritize her ludicrous requests, even to the point of kicking me out. Instead of believing his own daughter, he favored his wife and her unreasonable expectations. When I said that, he looked shocked and swiftly departed without saying anything. I now feel guilty about what they are going through. I know it's bad, and I'm not sure if I should have stated they deserved it. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. I'm not the judge. Still, the guilt weighs on me. Edit. I called my uncle to tell him of my father's visit. He spoke with a few relatives and confirmed that my father had reportedly been contacting everyone after many years, searching for my location. Most people had not responded, but one family on my father's side, who isn't very close to me, felt sorry for him and provided him my contact information and address. So, I was correct. My father did not go to the great lengths that he stated. He was only attempting to make me feel bad. Update 1. I'd like to thank everyone who commented on my post. It was a lengthy post, and I have not discussed it in depth with anyone other than my uncle. It was good to finally get everything off my chest, particularly regarding Julia. Her actions deeply traumatized me when I was younger. Based on the remarks, I believe I was correct in stating that Julia may have had some mental health issues. Her eagerness for me to embrace her as my mother was overwhelming. That being said, I can only infer it. I cannot diagnose her. However, I believe she would benefit greatly from seeing a psychiatrist to determine what was driving her conduct. It seems ridiculous for her to act the way she did simply because I refused to call her or accept her as my mother. Throughout my father's relationship with Julia, I tried to make explanations for his behavior. I knew he loved her, so I tried not to make a scene. But it didn't seem to matter. He didn't care. When it came down to it, he chose Julia above me, his biological daughter. So he had the guts to come up at my house after 6 years of no communication, asking me to assist him out. Even now, I know he was not sincerely sorry. He just apologized because he wanted my aid, not because he truly meant it. In reaction, I have taken precautions to protect myself. I've upgraded security measures around my house in case he shows up again. If he does and refuses to leave when I ask, I will contact the cops right away. Ideally, I'd prefer that he not show up at all, but I realize that's wishful thinking. He's going to come back and attempt to get me to help him again. He already has my contact details. He had been contacting me for the past few days, but I blocked him after a few hours. It's been nearly 5 days since his visit, and I presume he's been taking his time. However, I have a feeling he'll come up again. Just so you know, I'm not afraid of what he may do, it's just that I'm already emotionally spent, and I don't want a long argument with him. That is why I am taking every precaution to avoid protracted chats and have him depart as soon as possible. I'm hoping that when I see him again, it won't be too emotionally draining. Update 2. 2 days ago, I posted here that I was confident my father would return. Actually, he did. He waited a week since our last meeting and came up today. When I spotted him standing outside and ringing the doorbell, I told him over the intercom that I didn't want to speak to him. I had just gotten home from work, so I was exhausted and not in the mood to deal with him. When he refused to go, I grabbed my phone, contacted the cops, and reported him for trespassing. He couldn't hear me from inside and had no idea I'd contacted the police. Until they arrived, he waited outside my door, beating on it and complaining that I was being too hard on him. He stated Julia admitted to making everything up and that they were both deeply remorseful for everything. He explained that all they could do now was apologize and hope for the best, as they couldn't go back in time to fix things. He insisted I give them some leniency, especially given what they're going through. I couldn't believe that even after discovering Julia had lied to him, prompting him to kick me out, he became defensive rather than admitting his sins. He was taking the entire issue so nonchalantly, which was annoying. However, I maintained my composure and did not speak to him. Thankfully, the cops arrived shortly, because his "what can we do about it now" attitude was really getting on my nerves. It was especially distressing because he had wrecked his relationship with his own daughter due to Julia's lies and still couldn't hold her accountable. When the cops arrived, he lost control and began yelling at me, claiming I had lost my mind and had no right to call the cops on my own father. I didn't care. I described the entire thing to the cops. I doubt he will face any charges, but I hope this teaches him a lesson. He did not physically resist being dragged away, but he did stare at me the entire time. I could see he was mortified, but I didn't mind. I was so pleased that he was being removed and that I would no longer have to deal with him. It may sound callous, but after today, seeing how little he appeared to care that Julia lied and ruined our relationship, I feel validated. What I mentioned was completely accurate. He and Julia deserved each other, and more importantly, they earned everything that was happening to them. Perhaps the small one didn't deserve it, though. The only person I feel sorry for in this circumstance is my half-brother. There's not much I can do about it but hope for the best. I sincerely hope for the best for him, at least since I have nothing against him. He's merely a youngster who has no idea what his parents are like. I'm praying that he doesn't get caught up in all of this commotion and has to suffer as a result. If he does, he will be the second child Julia and my father have failed, after me. Update 3. After the officers took him away, my father did not contact me for over 3 weeks. Then, a few days ago, I got an SMS accusing me of being awful. The message stated that I was a terrible person and that they regretted reaching out to me in the first place. It stated they were ridiculous to expect me to understand their situation because I've always been a selfish brat who didn't care about anyone else. According to the book, selfishness, not Julia, damaged my connection with my father. The message came from a number I didn't recognize, so I assumed it was my father or Julia. It doesn't matter. That was the last I heard from them, and they haven't contacted me again since. Interestingly, I heard about my father and Julia again today. My uncle called to tell me that a few cousins on my father's side had notified him of their current position. Apparently, my father and Julia are now living separately because he has been requested to leave his home. Julia's parents have moved in to care for her and the baby. According to my uncle, my father considered leaving the infant in foster care until they could get back on their feet. Julia became outraged and threatened to divorce him. Although he was able to calm her down, she was still so enraged that she had him kicked out of the house while she healed. I find it amusing that after kicking me out, he is now experiencing the same situation. One thing is certain, Julia has a mental health problem. Normal people do not behave in such extremes. That being said, I don't have to worry about it because she's no longer in my life. I just think it's funny that my father is going through this, and I felt compelled to share. This is really his karma.